Set for Life is the game from the National Lottery where you can win 10 grand every month for 30 years. So go smash this month, next month, and make every month amazing. Play Set for Life Mondays and Thursdays.
Set for Life from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures, and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
The B&Q 3 for 2 paint offer is now on. Get an unmissable 3 for 2 on coloured emulsions such as Dulux, Farrow & Ball, and Valspar. This show-stopping deal ends Monday, so hurry to B&Q. You can do it when you're 3 for 2 it. Excludes white and ready mixed trade. Every third item per single transaction in descending price order free. Offer ends 24th of February. See DIY.com.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade. Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn. When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
This Monday, February 24th, the sports world celebrates the lives of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna with a memorial at Staples Center in Los Angeles.
It was my dream to be a Los Angeles Laker.
Buckle up for Kobe Bryant. The Lakers repeat back-to-back titles.
Wherever you are Monday morning, you can listen to live coverage of Kobe Bryant's memorial on TuneIn. Beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, search Remembering Kobe Bryant to honor the basketball legend and his family.
Mamba out.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Foundation and the Ad Council. Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Stocks and Treasury yields drop, precious metals rally. This on signs the coronavirus outbreak is curtailing economic growth. We look at the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's down 0.8%, down 28. The Dow's down 0.7%, down 205, and the Nasdaq's down 1.25%, down 120. The 10 years up 11.30 seconds. The yield 1.47%. West Texas Intermediate crude is down 1.2% at 53.22 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 1.4% at 1642.60 an ounce. The dollar yen 111.73. Euros at $1.851, and the British pound $1.29.61. Machinery giant Deere is delivering an unexpected increase in earnings and maintained its annual outlook as early signs of stabilization in the U.S. farm sector offset a slowdown in construction. Deere shares are up the most in 3 years, up 8.4%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett. You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, we got some economic data this morning that showed U.S. business activity shrank in February for the first time since 2013 as the coronavirus hit supply chains and made firms hesitant to place orders. To get a sense of what's going on, we welcome our good friend Tom Orlik. He's a chief economist for Bloomberg Economics, lived and worked many years in Beijing, has a real feel for what's going on in China. He joins us from our Bloomberg 99.1 studio in Washington, D.C. Tom, thanks so much for joining us. So the data that came out of the market PMI today really brought home for many in the market that this coronavirus is going to be an economic event, it appears. Where do you see the biggest risk from what's going on in China right now?
So I'm a bit surprised to see this hitting the U.S. services sector so early. Certainly this is going to be a big blow for China in the first quarter. Certainly there's going to be supply chain snarl-ups, which are going to mean the impact ripples around Asia and around the world. The U.S., though, seems a long way away. Certainly the U.S. services sector is not very integrated into what's going on in China. In some ways, the trade war was about President Trump trying to get more access for the U.S. services sector to the Chinese economy. So the fact that we're seeing the U.S. numbers coming off so much and so quickly, I think rings an alarm bell that the global ripples from this virus could be bigger and appear more quickly than anyone anticipated.
Tom, is there also an implication that perhaps there was more weakness underneath that was building regardless of the coronavirus?
Yeah, I mean, that is also something to think about, Lisa. I think people were coming into 2020 with a certain amount of optimism. We had some easing from the Fed. We had easing from the People's Bank of China. The ECB did what they could to spur European growth. Of course, the trade truce meant there was some optimism about what was going to happen to exports over the course of the year. The coronavirus has completely changed the narrative. At a minimum, it means any kind of recovery is going to be delayed until the second quarter. It could mean that we're in for another year of very bumpy growth and elevated risks of a downturn.
So, Tom, based on the work you've done, the contacts you have in China, what's your best guess as to how much of the economy is really being impacted? How much are people back to work? What percentage are still at home? What percentage of the economy is really back versus offline, I guess?
I mean, that is the $14 trillion question, Paul. And we've been trying to answer it through a variety of different means. We've been looking at high-frequency data on passenger travel. We've been looking at FX trading volume, which is a proxy for what's going on with imports and exports. We've been reading the corporate announcements, speaking to our contacts across China. Our best estimate is that around 50% of China is back at work. And that, sustained over the course of a month, would mean that China's GDP in the first quarter doesn't grow at all and potentially contracts on a sequential basis.
This is important, especially what you were saying earlier about how in the entire world there seems to be a faster bleed through of the effect of the coronavirus and efforts to contain it. I'm wondering whether you think that this calls into question the V-shaped recovery that so many economists are talking about.
So when we think about China, one of the reasons why I'm not succumbing to extreme pessimism right now is because China's government is really effective at closing things down. We see that right now, hundreds of millions of people effectively under lockdown, under quarantine. But China's government is going to be really effective at opening things up again as well. We've just had some announcements from the Politburo, the top level of China's leadership, and they indicate that the balance of concern in China, well, certainly they're still very concerned about the outbreak and public health and minimizing the risks there, but they're also increasingly concerned about growth and getting people back to work. And I think one possibility in the next week or two, if the government thinks that the public health risks can be contained, is that we see an accelerated move to get China's workers back into the factories, back into the offices, at which point the V-shaped recovery, which a lot of people are kind of implicitly penciling in, will start to look like more of a real possibility.
Hey, Tom, I know in your work you look at kind of what corporations say and do. Are you surprised this past earnings season we haven't had more companies call out the coronavirus as a risk to either their supply chain or their demand? I mean, I know Apple did in a pretty high-profile way, but I'm surprised that, like, even Deere today didn't really mention that much at coronavirus being a risk.
Right. So on this, Paul, I want to give a brief shout-out to our colleagues in Bloomberg Intelligence who are just comprehensively on top of the industrial story and the company story and certainly suggest that people go and take a look at what they're saying to get all the details on the industry level impact. What we've done is try and track corporate announcements to give us a kind of a view on the supply chain risks. And one of the things which struck us reading through around 180 corporate transcripts is that the degree of concern that we're hearing from the multinational boardroom doesn't really match up with the bleak reality on the ground in China. Yes, there are certainly more boardrooms, more corporations now talking about the risks and giving some detail and some color on how they see it impacting their company. But there's an awful lot saying, yeah, we're going to wait and see, or yeah, we see some risks, but we've got some inventory, so we're going to manage through. And to us, that doesn't seem to be sufficiently taking account of the way in which China has really closed down now for several weeks.
Tom Orlick, thank you so much for being with us and for a dose of reality of why you're not totally jumping on the pessimism bandwagon just yet, but still have some concerns about what's going on.
Yeah, I think his estimate coming out of Bloomberg Economics about maybe 40 to 50% of the economy is still kind of offline. That's a big number, and it just kind of calls into question the duration, as Tom was suggesting. If it goes on for longer, could have a material impact on Q1 GDP.
Yeah, Tom Orlick, chief economist for Bloomberg Economics. There's also the question of the spread throughout Asia. Japan and South Korea in particular in the forefront, with Japan seeing its cases double overnight. South Korea also seeing an increase. Japan in particular, the population is older. There is a culture not to take a sick day. So people coming in, and there are a number of cases that have been popping up in different parts that the government can't really track. A lot of pressure on that government, given the fact already that there seemed to be a slowdown in the works. And this seems to be affecting the yen, which has very much been in the focus and weakening, although today kind of stable. Coming up, Bloomberg Balance of Power, taking a look at what's going on in the Beltway and beyond as the Democrats heat up for the caucus of Nevada. I'm Lisa Abramowitz along with Paul Sweeney, and this is Bloomberg Markets.
In addition to Bloomberg Radio, you can catch the latest news and biggest newsmakers on Bloomberg Television. Look for us on DirecTV Channel 353 or check your local listings. That saying, success breeds success.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
Peoples of London. Cooking for family and friends is a real hassle, Sergey tells me. So I, Alexander, occasionally take care of marvelous dinner for whole family.
Which means we all go out for meerkat meals.
Exactly. How did you guess? Get 2 for 1 on food for up to 6 people at your local favorites, like North by Northwest Pub, with meerkat meals. When you buy, so compare the market. Qualifying purchase, app only, 2 for 1 on selected food, participating restaurants, a la carte only, Sunday to Thursday, T's and C's and exclusions apply.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
This Monday, February 24th, the sports world celebrates the lives of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna with a memorial at Staples Center in Los Angeles.
It was my dream to be a Los Angeles Laker.
Buckle up for Kobe! The Lakers repeat back-to-back titles!
Wherever you are Monday morning, you can listen to live coverage of Kobe Bryant's memorial on TuneIn. Beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, search Remembering Kobe Bryant to honor the basketball legend and his family.
Mamba out. Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, I'm David Weston. Welcome to Balance of Power, where the world of politics meets the world of business. On the brief today, Sophie Cameroon in Hong Kong on the mounting human and economic toll of the coronavirus. Maria Tadeo in Brussels on the EU budget talks, and Bill Ferry's in Washington on the U.S. reaching toward a peace deal with the Taliban. So let's start, first of all, with Sophie Cameroon, of course, over in Hong Kong. Give us the latest. There are different numbers bouncing around. Do we have a sense of the numbers or even the methodology at this point, Sophie?
Well, these shifting numbers, David, certainly magnifying just how China is managing the outbreak. Hubei revising its case count once again this Friday as some cities in the province had to include write-offs that were made for February 19th. And Hubei also revised its February 20th numbers, pushing the confirmed case count above 63,000. Plus, prisons are also now being included for reporting, with clusters discovered in China's third biggest province of Shandong as well, which the central government said will be investigated. So Shandong now has a total of 748 cases, and the outbreak has affected industrial and port activity in the eastern province. And now, according to Bloomberg Economics, the economy in China this week running at about 50 to 60% of its normal capacity, but authorities just aren't seeing a turning point yet when it comes to the epidemic. And so, in the Politburo's meeting this week, it indicated it would deepen the focus on stabilizing the economy. This as we're seeing the impact on global supply chains and business sentiment, which is showing up in global PMI data. U.S. business and manufacturing activity, for example, looking sluggish, with businesses hesitant to place orders. We're also seeing a pickup in cases outside of China, which could indicate a new phase in the outbreak. The surge in Iran, in particular, raising red flags for the WHO, given the concerns around infections not being traced back directly to China. David.
Really quite a disturbing story. Thank you so much to Sophie Cameroon over in Hong Kong. And now we go to Brussels and Maria Tadeo, where they're trying to hash out a budget over there. What are the issues? As I understand it, there are hawks and doves involved, Maria?
Well, there's many issues, and this is day 2 of a very long summit already. And just to give you some context, European leaders are trying to get to a compromise over the budget for the European Union for the next 7 years. We're talking about 1 trillion euros. And the obvious question here is who is going to pay for what, and what is this money going to be used for? And adding to tensions, of course, and this has to be agreed unanimously by 27 countries, is the fact that the United Kingdom has now left the EU, and there is now a gap of 60 billion euros that someone is going to have to fill up. Now, there are countries that will say they don't want to contribute more. They want to cap that at 1% of gross national income. Others that will tell you we all need to put more money on the table, and we don't want to see spending cuts going into this budget. Now, at this hour, there is a compromise proposal that is floating around, but it's unclear whether European leaders will sign up to this, will agree to this. And the thing is, you need to keep into account that there are a number of issues here. You have the North and the South. You have West and East, countries that have different interests. We know that for Emmanuel Macron, getting a good deal on agriculture is very important. That is a very, very big and powerful lobby in France. And then you have Angela Merkel in Germany. This is the biggest checkbook. She needs to be able to go back home and show taxpayers that she's found value for money. But as I mentioned at this hour, it's unclear whether or not we get a deal on this budget.
Okay, Maria, thank you. Terrific for reporting now, coming from Brussels, and that's Maria Jaleo. Now let's go down to Washington and Bill Ferries. So, Bill, take me through, because I'm a little confused right now. I saw an announcement that the Taliban in Afghanistan says they're going to have a signing ceremony in front of international monitors on the 29th, a week from tomorrow. What are they going to sign if, in fact, that happens?
Well, they're basically signing an agreement, and that will only happen if we have a 7-day reduction of hostilities between now and then. So that remains to be seen. But they'll be basically signing an agreement to enter some kind of talks with the current Afghan government that would presumably lead to a power-sharing deal or a peace deal that would, the U.S. hopes, allow it to begin drawing forces down much more than it has in recent months.
Yeah, at the same time, that does not automatically mean we withdraw troops, right? Do they have to get the power-sharing deal first?
Exactly. I think the U.S. at this point sees itself holding about 8,600 troops in Afghanistan for the coming months and perhaps the coming year. It does allow a little bit of a drawdown, and I think President Trump will look to tout that accomplishment. But it certainly doesn't mean it's a watershed moment. It doesn't mean the U.S. involvement in Afghanistan is over after almost 19 years. That's still quite a ways away at this point.
Bill, we also have to get your thoughts on this report out of Washington yesterday that there was a behind-closed-door security briefing in which intelligence officials told some members of Congress that, in fact, Russia once again was trying to interfere in the elections this year, 2020, on behalf of President Trump. Reportedly, President Trump was none too pleased with that briefing. What do we know about it?
Well, there was a briefing by representatives from the Director of National Intelligence up on Capitol Hill. It does seem that they were asked about Russia's role and essentially responded that Russia continues to meddle in some way. And were also asked whether Russia is how it views the election. And the response appears to be that Russia still would favor a Trump presidency over that of any of the Democratic candidates. I'm not sure the two issues are linked. It's not clear that they are meddling directly to tip the scales in Trump's behavior at this point. That may be a fine line for some, but that's one of the reporting lines we're chasing. But it does, seem that from the intelligence community's point of view, Russia is still very much engaged in some of the actions that first arose online in 2016.
Okay, Bill, thank you so much for your reporting from Washington. That's Bill Ferries, our colleague down there, who reports on national security. And now it's time to get a check on the markets and whether and how they may be reacting to the day's top stories. Joining us now is Abigail Doolittle. So as I look at the equity markets, a second day in a row.
Indeed, a risk-off day, and certainly in reaction to the coronavirus, renewed fears that we have no idea how bad this tragedy could get. The human impact devastating, but what will the eventual impact be on the global economy? We've seen a number of companies, of course, cut their numbers, and we've been talking about this for weeks and months around different events, whipsaws, because there has been some volatility that at the end of the day, it always comes down to that corporate profit outlook. And if there is a view that that is going to continue to be trimmed based on this coronavirus, we have that PMI number coming in at contraction, the lowest level since 2013. Perhaps that coronavirus taking a toll here in the U.S. If investors continue to think that, you're probably not going to have that FOMO. You're going to have cooler heads prevailing.
And I wonder if the bond market may be as important right now. I see the 10-year now is down below 1.5.
Indeed, and the 30-year hitting an all-time low. So investors,
flattening of the curve across the board is not good.
Yes, it's going to be interesting to see how all this plays out. And of course, the Fed, a lot of folks, one of the narratives that we've heard this year is that stocks have continued to climb in the face of all sorts of challenges because the Fed has the markets back. But as we continue to see this tragedy play out and what does happen to the yield curve, bonds continuing to rally, it's going to be interesting to see what does happen. Will they have the ammunition that investors are hoping? But today, again, a bit of a risk-off tone. The first down week this month, in fact.
Yeah, and the Fed can have the markets back, but what do they do about a coronavirus? I'm not sure the Fed can go
we just don't know right now.
Coronavirus. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much to Abigail Doolittle for the market check. And now we welcome Mark Crumpton. He's here with Bloomberg First Word News.
David, the United States plans to sign a peace agreement with the Taliban a week from tomorrow. It's intended to end the war in Afghanistan, America's longest ever. The deal is still contingent on a 7-day-long partial ceasefire that begins at midnight. Once the agreement is signed, talks will start between the Taliban and the Afghanistan government. President Trump is looking for a permanent national intelligence director. U.S. Ambassador to Germany, Richard Grenell, is the new acting director, but he's expected to be a short-timer overseeing the nation's 17 spy agencies. The president told reporters Thursday that he's considering Georgia Republican Congressman Doug Collins for the job, but Congressman Collins said today he's not interested. Germany is stepping up the police presence throughout the country. Authorities say they'll also keep a closer watch on mosques and other sites after racially motivated shootings that killed 9 people. A 43-year-old German man fatally shot the victims of immigrant backgrounds in a Frankfurt suburb Wednesday before killing his mother and himself. Police say he left a number of rambling texts and videos portraying racist views. The British Prime Minister Boris Johnson sailed through his new government's first major economic health check as he prepares to lead the nation through a potentially bumpy Brexit transition. Several indicators this week, from inflation to retail sales, confirm signs of a so-called Boris bounce, a pickup in growth following the Conservatives' election win. The Treasury is also on track to borrow less than forecast. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks very much, Mark. Coming up here, we look at the Nevada caucuses and then on to South Carolina and Super Tuesday with Lara Brown of George Washington University. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Tom Keane and Jonathan Farrow enjoy.
The B&Q 3-for-2 paint offer is now on. Get an unmissable 3-for-2 on coloured emulsions such as Dulux, Farrow & Ball and Valspar. This show-stopping deal ends Monday, so hurry to B&Q. You can do it when you're 3-for-2 it. Excludes white and ready mix trade. Every third item per single transaction in descending price order free. Offer ends 24th of February. See DIY.com.
Good morning. This is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
This Monday, February 24th, the sports world celebrates the lives of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna with a memorial at Staples Center in Los Angeles.
It was my dream to be a Los Angeles Laker.
Buckle up for Kobe Bryant! The Lakers repeat back-to-back titles!
Wherever you are Monday morning, you can listen to live coverage of Kobe Bryant's memorial on TuneIn. Beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, search Remembering Kobe Bryant to honor the basketball legend and his family.
Mamba out.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Bloomberg Business Flash, now more Balance of Power with David Weston.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. The next step on the road to the Democratic nomination for president comes with caucuses in Nevada tomorrow, followed in short order by another debate on Tuesday, a primary in South Carolina next Saturday, and Super Tuesday 3 days after that. To give us her sense of the race, we welcome now Lara Brown. She's Associate Professor and Director of the Graduate School of Political Management at the George Washington University, coming to us today from Washington. So, Professor, thank you so much for joining us. Let's start first with Nevada and then move on. And with respect to Nevada, explain how important this is in the race. It appears that Bernie Sanders has a commanding lead according to the polls right now. Is the question who comes in second?
Well, I do think the question is going to be who comes in second. Certainly Vice President Joe Biden's campaign has talked about him surging and doing well there. But I think we saw in the debate that Senator Elizabeth Warren had a very strong performance. She came out as a fighter. She could very well eat into Senator Bernie Sanders' lead and take some of his vote. And if that is a close race there at all, there will be sort of a shakeup in this idea that Senator Sanders is unstoppable.
Well, that's the question. Unstoppable may be strong, but certainly right now it looks like he's ahead without a doubt. And the question is who can really cut into that lead or catch up with him. What is the best path for somebody actually to keep him from gathering more delegates than anyone else before he goes into Milwaukee?
Well, I think the most important thing is that he has to sort of fare poorly in South Carolina. So the real question is going to be what happens in South Carolina. Bernie Sanders does not have that strong of support among African Americans who are over 45, and much of the electorate in South Carolina is African American and an older electorate. That won't be a very good kind of constituency for him. And then when you look at the Super Tuesday states, you have to realize that there are 6 southern states that vote that day. And those states are not necessarily teed up for Senator Sanders to run the table on. Those 6 states actually have more delegates collectively than California does individually. And so while much of the race has been focused on who's going to lock up California, I would argue that there is a strong chance that Senator Sanders may be locked out of delegates in places like Tennessee and Alabama, where he will need to gather delegate votes if he is going to win this contest.
And how does winning the contest, that is to say the nomination, fit with winning a general election in November? In fact, when you look at, for example, California on the one hand and those 6 southern states on the other hand, I would think that they might go for very different sorts of candidates. What's the candidate the Democrats need to come up with that could potentially beat Donald Trump, which I guess, after all, is the goal?
Well, so I would argue that what the candidate needs to do is build a broad coalition of voters. And that means for Democrats, they have to be able to pick up and show support among all different age groups, and as well as both African Americans and Latino voters. There is not going to be a candidate who wins a presidential race who doesn't have strong support in the minority community, but also strong support among moderate voters or those, especially women, who are living in the suburbs and are college educated.
Is the Democratic Party disserved at all by the fact that we had people of color who were in the race who are now gone? We have 2 women left. But it's surprising we have an awful lot of white men. I'm one of them, so I'll guilty as charged. A lot of white men here vying for the leadership of the Democratic Party.
Well, I think what that is about is that many Democrats are looking back at 2016 and saying to themselves, what did we do wrong? And I think the answer is not that they nominated a woman. The answer is that they failed to reach out to blue-collar workers in the Midwest. And so with that knowledge, many Democrats have said we need to elect or nominate someone who will appeal to non-college educated white individuals within places like Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania. I think, unfortunately, that fails to recognize that there are changing demographics in this country, and the states look very different in 2020 than they did in 2016. North Carolina, Arizona, Colorado, all could very well be in play, not to mention Florida. And when you look at those states, that means you probably need either a person of color or a woman to also appeal to that more diverse electorate.
Well, you make a really important point here, Professor. I'm glad you made it, which is, I understand, I've read at least, that if you had the same proportions of the different groups voting the way they did last time, that in fact Donald Trump would not have won the election because the groups that are growing faster are the ones that he did not do as well among.
That's correct. I mean, I think one of the things that parties fail at is that they tend to always want to run the last war, right? It is this problem where they look back and they say, what did we do wrong? And they don't necessarily look forward or account for how the country is changing, how the electoral college map shifts slightly, and also really who the constituents are that will make up the new coalition. Because it is certainly true that President Donald Trump has not grown his coalition since 2016, and that in and of itself puts him in a serious position of weakness.
Yeah, terribly important point. Thank you very much for making it. That is Lara Brown. She's associate professor at George Washington University and also the author of Amateur Hour, Presidential Character and the Question of Leadership. Still ahead here, it's a car revolution as automakers scramble to catch up with Tesla in the move to electric vehicles. Our colleague Alex Steele is here for a preview of what is to come. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Revisions, return policies, there are so many ways to redo a decision.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Do they have any path other than the courts?
Except here, we have to get it right the first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war. Are there winners?
So that you can too.
How does your modeling have to pivot to reflect a different scenario?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio. I'm David Weston. EVs on the brink of change premieres on Bloomberg Television tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. The special explores the future of electric vehicles, the players in the growing space, the path to mass adoption, and the challenges facing consumers and automakers. Here is a taste where Bloomberg's Daybreak anchor Alex Steele spoke to the heads of Peugeot and Ford on coming together to make it in the EV space.
This transformation for the industry is going to be a challenge for many OEMs. It's going to be a kind of Darwinian period for the industry, but hold on. This is going to be bumpy for the next few years.
I think that the notion of any one company going alone into this new future is something that you're probably not going to see a lot of.
Ford and Volkswagen recently joined forces to develop electric and self-driving cars.
The business part of you wouldn't do these things, but that's because the leadership part of you requires that you do it.
Ford will build battery cars on VW's platform, and VW will invest $2.6 billion in Ford's autonomous affiliate Argo AI.
It just makes sense for two big companies to share some of the efforts, which will make both companies faster and more efficient.
Volkswagen and its Chinese JV partner are investing more than $4.4 billion in 2020 to rev up production.
You also immediately have the market to scale up, and it'll allow that group of companies to get faster to market with affordable technology that now may actually give them a little bit of a competitive advantage for a few years versus trying to do it alone.
For more, welcome now Bloomberg Daybreak and Commodities Edge anchor Alex Steele. So congratulations, you worked long and hard on this. And
it was like beautiful. 2+ years.
I'm really looking forward to it. But of all the things we just heard, the thing that I really heard was bumpy.
Yeah.
The Peugeot heads, Bumpy may understate what the car makers are going through.
I agree with you, and you actually did some of those interviews on that string, and bumpy is a definite understatement. I mean, these companies are losing and spending billions of dollars as they are forced to pivot, and they're forced to make these huge projections, like X amount of our car sales are going to be EVs by this year, and they're not profitable yet, and they can't compete with Tesla, and they don't have that technology. That's a very tough spot to be in.
It feels a little like Field of Dreams. You know, if you build it, they will come. Because right now, it's not like there are people are lining up around the block saying, please give me an EV. They're building them in advance.
And we try and tackle that in the pieces, and like the consumer needs more options in order to buy them. So then the car makers need to make them, but then they can't make them because it's not profitable, but they still need to put the money out there. And that's I don't know how you solve for that. And no one knows how to solve for that. And that's kind of what we explore.
And isn't the thing that's driving it governments? I mean, China, 100%. Perhaps first and foremost, China?
What we do learn is that without subsidies, sales of these cars fall full stop. No matter what country that you're in, China tried to roll them back, and the car sales wind up falling off a cliff for EVs, and they're thinking about bringing them back or sort of moving them around or extending them a little bit. Singapore, for example, is doing more stuff. Germany is going to consider extending subsidies as well. So without it doesn't float. But that doesn't necessarily create a real supply and demand market. You have to wait for that. But when you wait for it, you got to spend the money. You're not profitable.
Thank you so much, Alex. It's such a treat having you here. And it's going to be a bigger treat, actually, to watch that special tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And now we're going to turn to Stock of the Hour. Deere is the best performing stock on the S&P 500 today and is heading for its biggest gain since 2016. This after the company reported a surprise increase in first quarter profit. Kaylee Lyons is here with more, turning us from tractors to cars, I guess is what we're doing here.
Or cars to tractors. So yes, Deere beat, but the fact is it was really low expectations going in that they were jumping over. Earnings per share came in at $1.63. That was 25% above the consensus estimate, and that came despite the fact that across all of their major business segments, sales actually fell, most notably in the financial services division, but also you're seeing continued weakness in that construction and forestry sector, which saw net sales fall by about 10%. And for agriculture and turf, which we know has been struggling for many quarters as farmers amid the trade war have not wanted to invest in that really expensive equipment, revenue did fall 4% in this first quarter, but Deere said, yes, their farmer is still subdued, but the signs of stabilization are there and things are improving, mostly because we do have a phase one trade deal.
And what about coronavirus?
Well, so it's interesting. Deere did not mention it in its statement, but it had to field questions about the virus on the call. They say the impact on sales should be relatively small. The bigger issue is in terms of the supply chain, because its top supplier is based in China. They've had to start making some contingency plans in order to get that freight, get the supply in, should there be any disruptions because of the virus. And then in terms of this trade deal that is driving a lot of that farmer optimism in regard to China's agricultural purchases, that remains an open question. Deere says it's too early to make any kind of call in regard to that.
Open question may be a little gentle right now, because the people we talk to say they're nowhere on phase one. I mean, they're not even thinking about phase one right now. So at the very least, it's going to postpone the possible recovery on their top line, because I understand it, Deere didn't do so well on the top line. It was more in the earnings.
Yeah, it was bad on the top line. Revenues were down about 6% year over year. Again, that beat, but street expectations were pretty low. All the profit that Deere is getting here is because of efforts like offloading their revenue. So they're making some, offloading their inventory, making some revenue off of that. They're also, for example, there's a lot of things that Deere is doing to improve that bottom line, but the top line is still struggling.
Whatever they're doing, they're having a good day today. That's nice. Okay, many thanks now to Bloomberg's Kaylee Lyons. Up next, we talk Nevada caucuses with the man who knows, the state's former senator, governor, and attorney general, Richard Bryan. That's coming up on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. business activity shrank for the first time in 6 years as the coronavirus hit supply chains. It made firms hesitant to place orders. That's a warning sign that the outbreak is beginning to hurt the U.S. economy. Meanwhile, the spread of the coronavirus has had an impact on airlines. The International Air Transport Association is expecting $29 billion to be slashed from its revenue this year. So U.S. stocks are falling on coronavirus concerns. The Dow is down 167 points, S&P down 25, the Nasdaq dropping 108 points or 1%. Well, there's word that Wells Fargo will pay roughly $3 billion to settle federal investigations into a range of consumer abuses that were rampant at the bank for years. And shares of machinery giant Deere & Company are up today after posting better than expected quarterly results. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing, but not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. This breaks my heart, and it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and gives it to families in need. To help, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Leaders are born.
What does it take to get the markets back on the rails?
Born leaders are here.
The timeline for that can be slow.
Karen Moscow.
Several nations are negotiating to evacuate diplomats.
And Nathan Hager.
How are you advising clients to navigate the shifting headlines?
Bloomberg Daybreak, weekday mornings at 5 Eastern.
Are we heading into correction territory, do you think?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
From New York, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. For Bloomberg First Word News, we go now to Mark Crumpton.
David, while China still accounts for the vast majority of coronavirus cases, there are now signs infections are spreading rapidly within other Asian countries. South Korea, Singapore, and Japan all have seen their totals climb this week. The epidemic is not yet considered a pandemic. That's defined as a situation where the virus is spreading across multiple continents. So far, the numbers outside China remain comparatively small. Of more than 2,200 deaths, only 11 have occurred in other regions. Iranians are voting for a new parliament today. More than 7,000 potential candidates were disqualified ahead of the election, including 90 sitting members of parliament who had wanted to run for re-election. The election comes at a time of economic uncertainty in Iran. U.S. sanctions have strangled the nation's ability to sell its oil abroad, pushing its economy into recession. President Trump's campaign ads will take over YouTube's homepage on Election Day and a few days before. Bloomberg has learned that the campaign bought the coveted ad space atop the country's most visited video website. About 3/4 of U.S. adults say they use the site. The world is on track to have the warmest winter ever recorded. A stubborn low-pressure system over the North Pole has pulled the jet stream north, backing it up against the fast-moving winds that constantly ring the polar region. The result, a tight barrier that's kept the cold locked in place. If the trend continues, it will set a global high for the season in U.S. records going back 141 years. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks very much, Mark. Tomorrow's the day for Nevada to weigh in on who should be the next Democratic nominee for president, with polls showing Bernie Sanders way out in front, and some people at least raising doubts about whether we might just have a repeat of something we had in Iowa with the fiasco that were the caucuses there. Joining us on the telephone from Las Vegas is Richard Bryan. He served as a Democratic senator from Nevada from 1989 to 2001 and is Nevada governor from 1983 to 1989. He is now director of the Fenimore Craig Law Firm. So thank you so much, Mr. Senator, for joining us. Give us your sense of where the race is right now. We've seen some polls, as I say, that show Bernie Sanders way out in front.
Well, we don't know the results of the caucus, of course, and won't know that until after the caucus on Saturday. But clearly, Bernie Sanders is surging in Nevada as elsewhere. I think the real winner of the debate, frankly, was Donald Trump. I was, as a Democrat and a strong supporter of Joe Biden, I was very dismayed at the colloquy. It just seems to me that the prize is winning in November. The primary, obviously, is an essential step, but my concern is that some members of our party are moving, I think, further to the left than most mainstream voters in America and most mainstream voters in Nevada, and that's a concern to me.
And a lot of the attacks, if I can call them that, in that debate were directed at other Democrats up on the stage. They weren't directed at Donald Trump. But for that matter, they also weren't directed very much at the front runner. Why isn't it that people aren't taking on Bernie Sanders more directly? When Joe Biden was in front, people took him on. When Elizabeth Warren was in front, people took her on.
Well, I think to some extent, the Bloomberg, this was his inaugural presence on the debate stage, and so he was clearly the focus, and he had been surging in the polls and looked like he may very well be a formidable candidate, still may be, but his performance, I think it's fair to say, even for his most enthusiastic supporters, was disappointing. His response to some of the very sharp inquiries by Elizabeth Warren and others, I think, did not go well for him. Now, this is his first debate, and the others have been doing this for months now, so he may very well right the ship, so to speak, but I think it was a very poor performance on his part, and he was the focus as the new guy on the block, so to speak.
Yeah, to remind people, Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of our parent company, Bloomberg LP. When it comes to Bernie Sanders, does he have a labor problem potentially in Nevada? We saw some questions from the culinary labor union out there, which is pretty powerful. Does he have a problem because he wants to abolish private health insurance?
Certainly, that is a big issue with the culinary. That is a very big issue, and as you know, they did an evaluation of the various candidates on their stand, and although the culinary has not endorsed any Democrat at this point, clearly the analysis reflected very unfavorably to Sanders and to Warren, who are talking about, Medicare for all. The culinary views its success in its negotiations in terms of the medical care benefits is one of the jewels in the crown of their accomplishment on behalf of their workers. So that is not popular with them, and frankly, I think it will hurt him with the culinary union, which is the largest and most effective political union in the state of Nevada.
So, Senator Bryan, we normally don't spend too much time on logistics, what goes on behind the scenes, but we have to, given what happened with Iowa, those caucuses. And I understand it's not the same. They're not going to use the same app that they use in the caucuses in Iowa. At the same time, we keep hearing some rumblings that people have not been trained properly. There may be some difficulty administratively getting a result out of Nevada, maybe along the lines of Iowa. Is there any truth to that in your opinion?
I don't know at this point. It was a different experience. I will say this, that one, I've been in a number of political campaigns and followed a number in my lifetime. I think it's time to abandon the caucus system. It's very confusing, although for the Democrats, the enthusiastic of this unbelievable. People waited 2, 3, 4 hours in line. Having said that, I think it's time to make a primary. That, to me, is the most effective way of determining how Democrats and Republicans feel about their potential nominees. And I would hope that the Nevada legislature does that next year when it convenes.
Finally, going beyond Nevada, let's go to Milwaukee and the state of the Democratic Party overall, because you are a Democrat. To what level are you concerned about the parties being able to come back together when all of this is over, and in fact it has a nominee? I'm sure at every time, every 4 years, there's some stage where we ask this question, but we particularly ask the question because of Bernie Sanders and some of his followers, and even the last question on the debate about what would happen if somebody had more delegates than anybody else going into Milwaukee, but didn't get the nomination, could they support him? It wasn't clear that Bernie Sanders would go along with that.
Well, Sanders has each of the nominees that they will support the winner. I hope that's true. There's a history here, as you point out. There are many who feel that Bernie's people didn't get on board in 2016 when Hillary was our nominee. There's no question there was certainly a lack of enthusiasm for her by the most enthusiastic Bernie supporters. They felt they had been treated unfairly. I think that is gone in this process. I think Bernie cannot contend that he has not been treated fairly. He's leading in many polls, as you know, but I hope that the enthusiasm that his supporters have for him, if he is not the nominee, can be transferred to who our nominee is. Without that, it's going to be a more difficult race in the fall.
So, Senator, final question here. As a Democrat, as you look at the people up on that stage, who do you think would be in the best position to beat Donald Trump, which is, after all, the goal of the Democratic Party this year?
Well, I come from the moderate wing of the party by today's standards, and I think one of the moderate candidates clearly. What we need to keep our base, and obviously many of them are enthusiastic for Bernie and Elizabeth, the so-called progressive wing of our party. But we're going to have to bring in all the Democrats. We're going to have to get a great many independent votes, and there are Republicans that are disaffected with the president. We need that to win. Without that, Donald Trump could very well be reelected.
Okay, thank you so very much. Really appreciate your time today, sir. That is Richard Bryan. He's former Democratic senator and former Democratic governor of the state of Nevada. Coming up here, President Trump reportedly was none too pleased when he heard of a classified intelligence briefing to Congress about Russian attempts to support him in this year's election. We talked with former U.S. ambassador to Russia and dean of the U.S. Diplomatic Corps, Thomas Pickering. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
Have you ever thought, I wish I'd had that information soon? 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are down, gold is up, and Treasury yields are down as investors take a defensive stance amid renewed concern about the economic impact of the coronavirus as it spreads outside of China. Chip makers are leading the losses as the S&P heads for its first weekly decline since the month of January. We look at the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 0.8%, down 28. The Dow's down 0.6%, down 190, and the Nasdaq's down 1.3%, down 129. The 10-year is up 15.30 seconds. The yield is 1.46%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is down 0.9%, 53.39 per barrel. While COMEX gold's up 1.6% at $16.4650 an ounce. The dollar yen, $111.70. The euro, $1.0859. And the British pound, $1.2972. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett. Now more of Bloomberg Balance of Power with David Weston right here on Bloomberg Radio.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. United States relations with Russia have never been simple or straightforward. But since at least 2016, they've added a new level of complexity on reports of Russian attempts to interfere with the U.S. presidential election. And now, reportedly, intelligence officials have given a confidential briefing to members of Congress that the Russians are doing it again in this year's election. Welcome now a true expert on U.S.-Russian relations. Thomas Pickering served as U.S. ambassador to Russia, as well as ambassador to the United Nations, to India, to Israel, and he holds the rank of career ambassador, the highest in the U.S. Foreign Service. He comes to us today from Washington for today's Conversation in Chief. So, Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for being back with us. We have this report now that apparently what happened in this confidential briefing yesterday said President Trump. But does it surprise you that the Russians may be trying to do this again in some way, shape, or form?
Thank you, David. And no, and you said they might favor President Putin. Obviously, you meant President Trump.
Yes, I did, yes.
That's perfectly okay. I think two things are true about intelligence operations everywhere by anybody. One is they will constantly seek to find weaknesses and weak points in the posture of the other side. And secondly, they will never admit that they have done so. And I think we have to live with that. That's part of life. It's part of reality. The notion, in fact, that there should be rules about being off base may relate to life and death, and they have in the past, but they don't relate, I think, to kinds of operations that we see going on here. So one, it should be no surprise. Two, I wonder why the president is surprised. Certainly he's gotten his own intelligence briefings from time to time. Hope he listens to them, because I think they're important. Thirdly, we should be taking every step we can to prevent this activity. There is no excuse that we should remain significantly vulnerable on this course if that is indeed the case. And I have to tell you, David, the notion that the truth is whatever I say it is a fatal blow to the notion that the United States has credibility, that it speaks the truth, that our campaigns are run on the basis that people can know and discern and understand the truth. And that is an undermining of the fundamental part of our democracy. And obviously it is also the seeds of destruction of the scientific method. I'm very concerned about it.
How does it affect the diplomatic corps from your vast experience as a U.S. diplomat? In the past, has it been the case that the United States has a bit more credibility than perhaps some other nations when we go into foreign courts and make our arguments for what is going on?
I would hope so, but I think once the leadership of the country adopts a different view, and whether that was okay on virtual reality television, it's not okay on real reality, life and foreign policy. And that makes a difference because, in fact, if the problem is from the top, can you trust the people down below in a situation in which they have to speak what is spoken by the top, or they have to leave? And that's a very destructive activity, and certainly one because what your diplomats tell you is going on is essential to promote the interests of the United States. And for me, that is very significant. And if your diplomats are pushed into a position where they have to please the boss by what they say, that is in many ways going to be an undoing of successful American diplomacy, and it begins with our credibility.
Let's talk about U.S. interests in what seems, at least to me, a fiendishly complicated situation, which is the situation with Turkey and the northeast of Syria, the Idlib province, what's going on with Syria, and with Russian support there. Reports were out yesterday that, in fact, Turkey has requested two, I think, batteries of Patriot missiles be provided by the United States in order to help it in that conflict, which, as I say, it's Syrian troops, as I understand it, but supported by Russia. Where are United States interests there?
Well, I think United States interests are to do everything they can to make sure that neither Syria nor Russia creates an even more massive humanitarian catastrophe than already exists. And it's something of an anomaly that President Erdogan, who is convinced himself that he must buy the Russian S-400 missile, is suddenly seeking American air defense to protect himself against either the incursions by the Syrian Air Force with Russian airplanes, or more importantly, perhaps incursions by the Russian Air Force, or their use of those air forces in bombing attacks to create massive movements of civilian refugees toward the Turkish border. We all knew that was going to be a problem. It's not a secret, but the idiosyncrasies of the Middle East never ceased to mystify me, and I spent 8 years there almost on assignment watching it, but it grows, and President Erdogan has suddenly wakened up to the fact that the S-400 probably is not the answer to his prayer either, and that he needs something now and more useful from the United States. The United States has been very hesitant to continue to support President Erdogan with military equipment as long as the S-400 buy goes through. So we'll have to watch carefully to see how this works out.
We had the Munich Security Conference this week, and we had our Secretary of State, Michael Pompeo, go over and give his estimate about where the state of the North Atlantic Alliance is. This is part of what he had to say.
I'm happy to report that the death of the Transatlantic Alliance is grossly over-exaggerated. The West is winning. We are collectively winning.
Are we collectively winning, Mr. Ambassador?
I think that that's obviously something of a bit of exaggeration when we have watched very carefully the major pressure by the United States on the NATO alliance to raise, obviously, its contributions to defense, but in ways that have not been seen before. And obviously, we see some disintegration in what I would call alliance willingness to, in fact, bear every burden and carry forward in every conflictual area that we would hope we could rely on them more for. So my sense is that we have seen a number of people wanting in one way or another to put the alliance back together again in a more serious way. And I hope that would allow it to be happen. Now, Secretary Pompeo is obviously entitled to his own view. I suppose in the words that were echoed in the past by Senator Moynihan years ago, everybody's entitled to their own view, but not to their own set of facts. And so we do need to look at the facts here and see how and in what way they really point to where we're going. But I think the reactions at the Munich Security Conference, more perhaps in the corridors than in public, but nevertheless with a large number of people there from the reports I have received, indicated there is still deep concern in Europe about the alliance and about the U.S. role there. Anything that Secretary Pompeo and President Trump can do to put that back together again is something not only in the United States' interest, but happily in their interest, and I hope they do it.
One of the pressure points at the conference actually was over Huawei, the Chinese tech giant. And I must say, bipartisan, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, was over there as well, saying you cannot be dealing with Huawei on 5G. There is a national security problem there. At the same time, the United States keeps threatening to cut off our allies. We tried it with the UK, and it seemed like they sort of called our bluff. What is the best way, if that is our national interest, what's the best way to get that accomplished?
I think the best way and the most useful way, and we aren't there yet, is to have an alternative to Huawei 5G. And while Ericsson and Nokia have been working on it, many have suggested they need U.S. support. There apparently is not yet a U.S. purveyor, a U.S. R&D and tech firm that is ready to come forward with the answer to that particularly difficult question. So countries will go where they see the economic benefits of going. Many of them, I think, would come with us if we had a competitor, particularly a better competitor technologically, and particularly a better competitor in terms of how and in what way the costs were put down to a place where our allies and friends and our coalition of partners here could come forward with us and make that happen. I don't think they want to go that way, but there are forces, obviously, in the market and elsewhere that make it hard for us to take a political stand for something else when the something else is not yet quite clearly on the table.
Yeah, really important point. Thank you so much to Ambassador Thomas Pickering. We're going to have more with him coming up at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on Bloomberg Radio. Coming up here, we're going to have more on Huawei and 5G and part of my interview with Ian Bremmer of Eurasia Group. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
If morning is not your favorite...
Look at that. A riveting quest. A glorious opportunity. A scratch card. Yet he remains unfazed by the challenge. Wavering at nothing.
Miss, please keep it down. We're in the quiet area.
Sorry. Here we are. The moment of truth. As he reaches...
Instant excitement with scratch cards from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Search Dream Big, Play Small. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. At the security conference in Munich this week, U.S. officials, Republicans and Democrats alike, I must say, urged Europe not to deal with Huawei as they move into 5G. On this week's installment of Wall Street Week, Gillian Tett of the Financial Times and I talked with Ian Bremmer, he's founder and president of the Eurasia Group, about a Europe caught in the middle of tech between the United States and China and what the United States might do to advance its interests beyond posing threats to allies.
I certainly believe that the data that Huawei has access to will be made available to the Chinese government as they find that useful. So the strategic alignment, the idea that Huawei is a national champion in the way that Lockheed Martin has been a national champion of the U.S. government historically, at the very least, yes, I do believe that. But more importantly, I think when we talk about 5G, we're not just talking about smartphones. We're talking, as you know, about the Internet of Things. It's the entire data infrastructure around smart cities, anything with a chip in it. And the idea that that would be aligned to a Chinese set of standards as opposed to an American set of standards with our allies, even though it's cheaper, even though it's rolling out more quickly, does strike me as something the Americans need to take very seriously.
Ian, this is what I don't get. Thus far, I've only heard stick. If you don't play our game the way we want, then we're going to cut you off, right? Where's the carrot? I mean, part of the problem is you said there's not alternatives in the United States for 5G. Why doesn't the United States invest in Nokia? Why doesn't it invest in Ericsson and things like that, where we could together develop 5G and not need Huawei?
Well, of course, this was the speech that was given by Attorney General Bill Barr, who has a telecom background, among other things, just 2 weeks ago. And he suggested, in addition to some urgent FCC decisions that would need to be made in terms of bandwidth made available to make 5G work, but also the idea that the Americans, a public sector supported consortium, industrial policy, dirty word for most Republicans.
Coming from a Republican government, let's say. Free markets, hello.
Except Republican governments during the Cold War were very supportive of the military-industrial complex. So what you have Barr saying is we need a military-industrial technological complex because the Chinese are fighting the Cold War very differently. And I understand that, but that's his one speech is not a policy. And you're absolutely right that the Europeans see a lot of money coming from Belt and Road, particularly in the 17+1, the East and Southern Europeans with the Chinese. Even the Italians, right, joined Belt and Road for a reason. The Brits are saying it's a cheaper system. Why are we going to come to the U.S. unless it's something for us? They don't have the companies. So unless we're finding a way to help build up the Europeans as well, it's hard to imagine that they're going to simply say, yeah, we're going to go with you, America First, Trump.
That was part of our talk with Eurasia Group President and founder Ian Bremmer on Wall Street Week. The full program airs tonight at 6 p.m. on Bloomberg Television and Radio. It's also available everywhere online. Coming up, Balance of Power continues on Bloomberg Radio. In our second hour, we're going to have more with Ambassador Thomas Pickering talking about Afghanistan, as well as talking about India and the upcoming visit of the president there. Plus, we're going to talk to UNLV Professor Dan Lee about the Nevada caucuses, whether we should really be worried about whether it will go okay. This is Balance of Power, Bloomberg Television, and on radio.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. The private jet industry is flying high. New models such as the Gulfstream G500, Bombardier Global 7500, and Textron Cessna Longitude helped bring the market to its highest level since it was felled by the recession more than a decade ago. Private jet deliveries rose 15% to 809 aircraft, two-thirds of which went to North American customers. Sales jumped 17% to $21.1 billion. For something more down-to-earth, the Napa Chateau that Doogie Howser built is on the market. The widow of late TV producer Stephen Bochco is selling her 47-acre weekend retreat for $8.5 million. The French country-style main house has 3 bedrooms and 3.5 baths, plus a 2-bed guest house, and plenty of wood and limestone detailing, 5,600 square feet in all. Outside, there's a pool, olive groves, and formal gardens. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
When you put together the puzzle that's today's business and political environment,
can you make a call given this swirl of data?
Is that already being reflected in the way that they're priced?
Make sure you have all the pieces.
Which segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny?
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction. Will he have to abide by a subpoena?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hi, it's Olivia Munn with my shelter pets, Frankie and Chance. Say hi, guys. When I adopted them, I discovered that they both have incredible personalities. Chance's sole purpose in life is to love and to be loved. Frankie is a little bit of a scoundrel and always entertaining. They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love. Adopt pure love at theshelterpetproject.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the Humane Society of the United States, and Maddie's Fund.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We begin with a spike in shares of eBay, and this headline from the Bloomberg Professional Service. eBay moving towards selling its classified ads business. That's a Dow Jones report. We have got shares of eBay rallying right now. eBay jumping by 2.5%. Dow Jones says eBay's classified ads business could be valued at about $10 billion. More on this developing story, but again, repeating the headline here, eBay moving towards selling its classified ads business. Looking at a down Friday here with the Dow, the S&P and NASDAQ very much in retreat. Stocks sinking, gold surging, treasury yields tumbling as investors take a defensive stance amid renewed concern about the economic impact of the coronavirus as it spreads outside of Asia. As for the market backdrop and the coronavirus, Tony Crescenzi is with PIMCO.
Markets are worried about this idea that global growth is very slow and that anything that comes along could tip it into recession because economies are close to so-called stall speed. For example, Europe growing less than 1%. If it grows any less, it could be near recession. Japan is already leaning toward recession. Secondly, markets are very worried, and this is, again, an ongoing issue, about the lack of policy buffers. What can central banks do to fix problems in economies?
And the yield on 30-year treasuries headed to a record low amid data showing American business activity shrank in February for the first time since 2013 as the virus hit supply chains. Right now we have got the 10-year of 14.30 seconds. Yield on the 10-year now 1.46%. One other economic note, existing home sales eased in January after setting a 2-year high. It is the latest evidence. Low mortgage rates are boosting the housing market after a lengthy drought. Data earlier this week showed building permits
permits at a 13-year high. 102 on Wall Street. Time now for the Market Drivers Report with a focus on American depository receipts. Here he is, Dave Wilson.
Thanks, Charlie. ADRs are lower, though not as much as U.S. shares. The S&P ADR index is down 0.4%, and the S&P 500 is down 0.9%. Italy's Unicredit has dropped 4% in U.S. trading. People familiar with the matter said CEO Jean-Pierre Moustier is in talks with the bank about his future. He's emerged as a candidate to become CEO of UK-based HSBC Holdings. Bancolombia has lost 7.5%. The Colombian lender's fourth quarter earnings were lower than analysts' average estimate in a Bloomberg survey. Higher costs and provisions for loan losses hurt the results. Gold mining ADRs are climbing along with the precious metal, which has risen to a 7-year high in New York trading. Canada's Barrick Gold is up 2.6%, and Eldorado Gold is up 25%. South Africa's Anglo Gold Ashanti is up 9.4%, and Harmony Gold Mining is up 10%. Telecom Italia has risen 4.4%. People familiar with the matter said private equity firm KKR expressed interest in buying as much as a 49% stake in the phone company's network of copper and fiber lines, Charlie.
All right, we thank you very much, Dave Wilson, keeping track of those American depository receipts. Lots of gold ADRs moving today. We've got gold up 1.5% right now at $16.43 the ounce. The U.S. rig count, oil rigs, up by 1 to 791, according to the latest numbers out of Baker Hughes. Recapping stocks lower, S&P down 28, a drop of 0.9%. The Dow down 188, down 0.6. NASDAQ down 1.4%. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Balance of Power.
We have the strongest economy by far in the world.
We're going to grow our trade relationship.
I know what's broken. I know how to fix it.
Where the world of politics meets the world of business.
They've got the money they need to run a very competitive race.
We've got now a real crunch few days for Brexit.
We want certainty in the markets. We want certainty in our trading relationships.
The administration is trying to create a new divided world.
Balance of Power with David Weston on Bloomberg Radio.
Nevada caucuses tomorrow will give us a read on the strength of Senator Bernie Sanders. Kickstarter raises the specter of labor organizing in tech. And the Taliban says it will sign an agreement with the United States in 8 days' time. From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio, welcome to the second hour of Balance of Power. It's the longest war in U.S. history, but the Trump administration is trying to bring it to a close as it negotiates with the Taliban, which announced today it will sign an agreement with the United States in front of an international observers at the end of the month, with Defense Secretary Mike Esper quoting the Beatles in explaining the path forward.
We have to give peace a chance, that the best, if not only way forward in Afghanistan is through a political agreement.
Still with us for our first hour of Balance of Power is Thomas Pickering, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Russia, and India. So, Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for staying with us. Give us your sense of these negotiations. It's clear the United States and President Trump particularly wants to get out of Afghanistan, but can we do it without essentially turning the entire country over to the Taliban?
Thank you, David, and I think that's a key question, perhaps the most important out there now in terms of where we are. There is huge distrust after 2 decades of warfare, more or less, and so the U.S. wants to be certain that the Taliban can actually slow down and stop its military activities, and some have kind of judged the question against the backdrop of there may be 80 attacks a day from their side. I believe if it falls down around 10, that will be a clear indication that the Taliban is making that effort. We're required as well by this sort of semi-ceasefire to cut ourselves back on aerial support and other things. Much of that is in response to Taliban attacks, so it ought to be something that is doable, even if there's a question. And how do we know what significant is? Well, that we'll know when we see it or we don't see it. That's sort of where we are. The second stage is also very important because it involves moving from the known into the unknown. A serious conversation, dialogue, and negotiation between the government of Afghanistan and the Taliban. Not happened in a serious way before, not happened at the table. A primary requirement if we are to get to the place where withdrawal can take place.
One tricky little issue here is whether they're going to recognize the government. We have the president, Ashraf Ghani's been reelected, at least he says he's been reelected. There's been a lot of dispute over that. But the Taliban were quick to come out and say, we don't recognize him as the president. Can they have talks if they don't recognize him?
I think so. I think that recognition is a kind of normally a diplomatic function between states. Recognition that's not in that category is a political question, and a political question, in my humble view, should not hold up the progress toward peace. And so let's see where it goes. The Taliban say they're ready to start tonight, which is already taking place in Afghanistan, and we'll see where that takes us. I don't think that's a problem. The problem basically down the longer road is that there are two views of this. This is a good agreement, and I think that view is probably right. How and in what way can we expect it to be carried out, particularly if we withdraw the leverage we have on the agreement by the presence of our forces while the Taliban is there and still has to perform? Now, we won't come to that stage until the Taliban and the government agree, and that's a big obstacle in the way that we'll have to unroll before that can happen. So we're at the beginning of an implementation effort in an arrangement which has in many ways made daunting the prospect of getting anywhere. So I compliment negotiator Khalilzad, our former ambassador there and a very able diplomat, for having brought us along this far. And I keep my fingers crossed that things will continue to move along. I hope they do. The other side of the issue is this is a little bit more like Henry Kissinger's negotiation with Vietnam. It was an exit for the United States, but an entry for the North Vietnamese army and the full takeover of South Vietnam. Were that to happen, obviously, we would have an entirely different view. And were that to happen, clearly, it would be something that hopefully we could, in one way or another, stop if it was going that way, or if not stop, find a way to accommodate the question that whatever commitment they make in Afghanistan, they have to be sure to make the commitment that they don't engage in harboring terrorists bent on attacking the United States.
Let's get one final thought from you, Ambassador Pickering, on yet another country that you were U.S. ambassador to, and that is India. We have the President of the United States now going to India this week for a visit. What is it that we want out of that visit? What is it that they want out of that visit?
Well, he'll be there Monday and Tuesday. I think that we both wanted a trade agreement. That looks less and less possible as we get close to the visit, and it's quite clear that there were some words from the president in the White House in the last couple of days saying that's probably not going to be possible. That is too bad because a U.S.-India free trade arrangement would be a real feather in the cap of both leaders, but a real help in promoting both the American and the Indian economy. Indians have for a long time, on the basis of undertakings back in the George W. Bush administration about their nuclear program to try to open the way for us to build nuclear reactors. Will that happen? That's not yet quite so sure. Other people seem to have benefited from that. What the U.S. will get out of that is obviously anything that comes in the commercial realm. Further defense cooperation is important. What clearly is also there, in case you have missed it, David, is we're in an electoral season.
Are we really?
Yeah. And so a visit by the president there, which is a great success, and apparently there will be a big rally in Ahmedabad in Gujarat, in which 150,000 red mega hats are going to be passed out.
It always comes back to...
Just to remind you a little bit, I know, of what most of us would like to forget but can't.
Thank you so much. This is Bloomberg Radio.
A PAC needs someone to follow.
It's got to be important for somebody to have a breakout moment.
Don't look now, but they're behind you.
Imports declined 2.8%.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Sources tell us that agreement is expected to include commitments on U.S. intellectual property.
With Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager.
Could we see that play into the results and the forward guidance?
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba,
please be done.
Over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
To protect her home and family in a disaster, Karen was willing to wade through water, mud, and insurance paperwork.
Yeah, I can do this.
You go, Karen! By simply understanding and updating what her insurance covers and doesn't cover now, she'll be better prepared no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
The market's in focus every bit.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London, Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What sea sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
This Monday, February 24th, the sports world celebrates the lives of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna with a memorial at Staples Center in Los Angeles.
It was my dream to be a Los Angeles Laker.
Buckle up for Kobe Bryant! The Lakers repeat back-to-back titles!
Wherever you are Monday morning, you can listen to live coverage of Kobe Bryant's memorial on TuneIn. Beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, search Remembering Kobe Bryant to honor the basketball legend and his family.
Mamba out.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Change in volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at Babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellett, developing story of these headlines from the Bloomberg Professional Service. Fly United and your baggage fees are going up. New fees taking effect on March 6th. United says it will increase some check baggage fees by $5. Those fees applying to 1 to 2 bags for domestic and short international travel. We've got stocks trading lower with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all declining, with the S&P down 31 points, down 0.9%. The Dow down 210, down 0.7%. NASDAQ lower by 149, a drop of 1.5%. Stocks sank, gold surged, Treasury yields tumbled as investors took a defensive stance amid renewed concern about the economic impact of the coronavirus. Chip makers leading today's losses on the S&P 500 index. S&P down 32, a drop there of 1%. The Dow at 29,000 even, down 219 points, lower by 0.8%. NASDAQ's down 152 points, a drop of 1.6%. 10-year yield 1.46%, 30-year yield 1.91%. We've got gold up 1.6%, 16.46 the ounce. Crude pulling back, West Texas Intermediate down 0.8% now, 53.48 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellett. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pellett. From the Interactive Broker Studio, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio. Nevada Democrats caucus tomorrow to make their picks for who should run against President Trump in November, with expectations that Senator Bernie Sanders will dominate. Welcome now, Dan Lee. He's Associate Professor of Political Science at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. So welcome, Professor. Great to have you here. Let's start with the most basic question. Should you be having a caucus out there at all rather than a primary? We heard from former Vice President Joe Biden last night on CNN in a Tall House meeting, basically saying, with respect, you should change the way you do business.
It's not that I think anybody's trying to do anything wrong. It's just really a complicated system. One of those iPads breaks down, things change a lot. And so I'm hoping you all decide to go to a primary next time.
So from what you know, Professor, are we going to have an iPad breakdown in Nevada tomorrow?
Yeah, so everyone's hoping to avoid those issues. So, one thing that might help alleviate some of the issues at the caucuses is that we had early voting. So, we had over 70,000 votes that were already cast. So that's one thing to look towards is exactly how much turnout there's even going to be at the caucuses on Saturday. But that does actually add a complication, right? So on the one hand, it'll alleviate the problems at the caucuses. It won't be as crowded. But the other hand, now we got to merge these results from the early voting with things going at the caucuses. Then we got to reallocate votes, in the realignment, depending on the viability of the candidates. So, it is a complicated process. And, as far as like whether they should scrap it for a primary, that's something that, the Democratic Party is going to have to think about.
So take us through that. As I understand it, when you're early voting, it's not just up or down, because there has to be a second or a third choice in case your person doesn't get it on the first one, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's not just like a regular primary. It's not like we just had an early primary mixing in with caucuses. It's more like almost like what they have in Maine right now, sort of ranked choice voting. Where if your first choice doesn't meet the viability threshold of 15%, then you move down to your second vote. So that's actually one question: is that how many people actually cast correct votes? As far as people filling out those ballots correctly or not, because this is again something that we haven't had first time that we're doing it in Nevada.
When you say, I believe you said 70,000, they think maybe early voting, something like that. So what's the size of the pie? Typically, how many people show up every 4 years for a Nevada caucus?
Yeah. So just to give you a sense, so again, it's an unknown as far as how many. Democrats are hoping it's going to be a high turnout, but so in 2016 turnout was around 85,000. Oh, right. So 75. It's actually coming. That's a huge slice of the pie. And then going back to 2008, there was over 115,000 votes. So it is a big slice of the pie. And again, like a lot of people took the advantage of voting early because one is they didn't want a caucus to begin with because people don't like caucuses, and two, seeing the debacle in Iowa, they really, really wanted to avoid the caucuses, which is another thing that drove high turnout to early voting.
Fascinating. And this is something that Nevada, as I understand, has affirmatively encouraged. We've seen polls now coming out, if you look at the average of Real Clear Politics or something like that, with Senator Bernie Sanders being well ahead of everybody else. At the same time, it doesn't seem there are many polls. Are they very reliable? Should we count on those?
Yeah, so Nevada is notoriously difficult to poll, which is one reason why no one wants to poll here, because no one wants to stake their polling reputation on the results in Nevada. It's a transient state. People are moving in and out, so it's hard to pinpoint voters. People work odd hours in the service industry, so again, it's hard to nail down voters. And then there's also language issues. So it is a difficult state to poll, which is again one thing that contributes to very little polling. And, that actually has, beyond just us pundits not knowing what's going to happen, it could have actual real implications on the campaign. So, for instance, Steyer did not qualify for the campaign or for the debate in Nevada. And, so his side is arguing that, because there wasn't enough polling in Nevada, that it didn't give him an opportunity to qualify. So
and he thinks he may have some support from the Hispanic or Latino community because of his work on immigration, as I understand it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And then the most recent poll that came out of Nevada showed Steyer in double digits. And again, he is polling well with minorities in some of these other early states like South Carolina. He's polling well. So it definitely influenced his campaign.
And how big a problem might Bernie Sanders have on this issue with the culinary workers and his proposing they do away with private health insurance?
Yeah, so it's hard to say exactly what effect that's going to have. So on the one hand, that might benefit the other candidates like Biden and Buttigieg and maybe potentially Klobuchar, but. So some of those supporters, first of all, there are other Latino voters that are not within the culinary union that would still benefit from Medicare for all. And some of those culinary union workers might still support, Sanders for his other positions on the issues. And, thinking, well, maybe Medicare for all won't even pass anyway if he gets elected. So, because it is, something that's not likely going to pass anyway. So, perhaps they'll still support him anyway.
Do we know what time the caucuses close?
They close when they're done.
Oh, I see. So it could be a late night, early morning sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, and also it will depend a lot on just how they're going to be merging these results with early voting and how they add it all up. Yeah.
Sounds pretty complicated to me. Okay, thank you so much. Great to have you with us, Professor Dan Lee of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Coming up here, organized labor made some inroads in tech, of all places. We talk with Lawrence Michal of the Economic Policy Institute. That's coming up next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stocks are falling amid renewed concerns over the economic impact of the spreading coronavirus. The Dow is dropping 188 points, S&P 500 down 29, the Nasdaq losing 138 points, or 1.4%. U.S. business activity fell this month for the first time in 7 years as the coronavirus hit supply chains and made firms hesitant to place orders. Existing home sales eased in January, dropping 1% from the prior month, but low mortgage rates helped boost an increase in purchases from a year ago. eBay is moving closer to selling its classified ad business, which could be worth $10 billion. Private equity firms Blackstone Group and TPG have recently expressed interest in the business. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
You're fierce. You take care of business and don't hold back. Taking care of your health shouldn't be any different. You know when something's off. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, and rashes. Listen to your body. It could be lupus. We're here to help you take control. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions. What if you could keep the top...
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London, Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking, and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
This Monday, February 24th, the sports world celebrates the lives of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna with a memorial at Staples Center in Los Angeles.
It was my dream to be a Los Angeles Laker.
Buckle up for Kobe Bryant. The Lakers repeat back-to-back titles.
Wherever you are Monday morning, you can listen to live coverage of Kobe Bryant's memorial on TuneIn. Beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, search Remembering Kobe Bryant to honor the basketball legend and his family.
Mamba out.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Years we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Cole Bear, filling in for Smokey because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the song was wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Business is like a puzzle.
Can you make a call given this swirl of data?
Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Balance of Power with David Weston.
Coming up on Balance of Power, Kickstarter has voted to unionize. We're joined by my colleague June Grasso to talk about how organized labor established a beachhead in tech, of all places. But first, let's get a market check with Charlie Pella.
And we are low across the board. David Weston, happy Friday. By the way, the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all retreating. Stocks sinking, gold surging. Treasury yields tumbling as investors take a defensive stance amid renewed concern about the economic impact of the coronavirus as it spreads outside of China. Right now, we've got the 30-year yield, 1.91%, the 10-year, 1.46%. Dow down 247, down 0.9%. S&P down 35, a drop of 1.1%. NASDAQ down 160, a drop of 1.7%. Chipmakers leading losses in the S&P 500 index, heading for the first weekly decline since January. Gold surging $26 the ounce, up 1.6%. $16.46, and West Texas Intermediate crude retreating by 1%, now at $53.37 a barrel. eBay taking steps toward a potential sale of its classified ads business, as according to Dow Jones, citing unidentified people familiar with the matter. We've got eBay shares pushing higher now by 2.1%. Industry data suggests the coronavirus is starting to impair America's economy. And with that story, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
Business activity contracted this month for the first time since 2013 as the coronavirus hit supply chains. The data compiled by research firm IHS Markit also show exports contracted for a second month. Service providers, meantime, reported the weakest orders since the recession a decade ago, while factory orders hit a 6-month low. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
Recapping, stocks lower, S&P down 35, a drop of 1.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now, Balance of Power continues. Once again, here's your host, the Friday edition, David Weston.
Happy Friday to you as well. Kickstarter employees voted to unionize this week, which is remarkable both because it bucks the trend away from organized labor in the private sector and because it's in the tech sector that thus far has successfully resisted organizing efforts. To take us through it, welcome now my colleague June Grasso and labor law expert Lawrence Michel. He is a distinguished fellow at the Economic Policy Institute. So Lawrence, thanks so much for joining us here. How remarkable is this, or is this a one-off?
Well, I think we've seen a lot of collective action in the tech sector from Google workers and many others. We in fact see a lot of activity for collective action and unionizing going on in many other sectors. You saw the sort of uprising of teachers. We see a lot of union organizing in the digital media space, in the nonprofit sector in Washington, D.C., and New York for sure. A lot of the institutions have become unionized over the last 5 years. So I think we're seeing that young workers, white-collar workers, are seeing that collective bargaining is something that serves their purposes. We also know from surveys that, roughly 50% or more of non-union workers would like to have collective bargaining in their workplace. So there's a very large unmet demand for collective bargaining, and it's easy to understand because people have been insecure. They haven't been getting the wage increases. They don't have voice on the job. So I don't think this is a one-off. I think that we will have to see how unionism, collective bargaining will be different in different sectors and occupations. So we'll need to see how it looks at Kickstarter, and other people will look, and it'll probably spread.
But we normally associate, at least I do, successful organizing efforts with lower paid workers with less mobility. I don't think of that when I think about tech employees, computer programmers and things like that. I think of them as being quite mobile. In fact, they move around quite a bit, and they get their services bid for, and they make quite a bit of money.
Well, that may be somewhat true, but if you actually look at the wages of what's happening to white-collar workers, including many tech workers, it hasn't taken off the way you might expect for a sector that seems to be in high demand. People want to know that if their place they work is going to be shut down, that there's going to be severance, they're going to be treated appropriately. People want to have a voice on the job to make sure that the workplaces are inclusive of women and people of color. They want to have a say, and they deserve a say, and the law says that we should promote collective bargaining. That's what the National Labor Relations Act says. I think what's nice about the Kickstarter is that I think the employer actually respected the process, allowed workers to debate this among themselves without managers getting in the way, and the workers determined that they would like to see collective bargaining, and we'll see how this moves forward. I think that it's really something where people can solve problems in their workplace. And rather than people try to get laws to help them, it's much better to be able to solve them collectively with your own employer.
So would collective bargaining in tech companies then be not about the wages themselves, an hourly wage, but about, health benefits, vacation, things like that?
Well, yes. And, one of the things that every collective bargaining agreement has, which is called a just cause clause, which means that, under our law, employers are able to fire people for no reason, good reason, or a bad reason. And something not right about that. In collective bargaining, there's always a just cause clause, which means that there has to be a legitimate reason, performance reason, for people to be fired, and it has to be progressive discipline. The punishment has to meet, the performance problem, and that the first thing is not to be fired. First, you usually get, a notice. Secondly, you may be suspended. Third, you may be fired. And so you get a chance to prove that you work with the supervisor. The union and the supervisors can work together to oversee this, to rehabilitate somebody. I have experience of this as an employer myself. Sometimes it's worked, very well, and frequently we're able to have people leave the firm who weren't performing well through that process.
Has the legal trend been to diminish union rights? For example, the Supreme Court case a few years ago that reversed 40-year decision on whether a union worker would have to pay fees.
Yeah, an agency fee for being being at the union. There have been over the last 40 years a wide array of things that have made it much harder for people to unionize, but some of it is actually just weaponizing things that have been in the law forever. So, for instance, it is illegal for an employer to fire somebody for unionizing, but the penalty for doing so is very minimal. Basically, the employer has to post something on their bulletin board saying, "I shouldn't have done it." They offer the worker back the job, which they may not have a resolution of this for 5-7 years, but the money they get paid back is all the money they lost, the worker lost, minus all the money they earned. So it's very little because everyone has to go out and get another job. So it actually makes a lot of economic sense, even though it's illegal, for employers to fire someone. And in 30% of the union drives, employers actually do fire people illegally.
How much of what we're seeing, perhaps, with Kickstarter is a result of the so-called gig economy? There have been a lot of people who complain about some of the things you've raised, such as benefits, that with gig economy, it's much harder to get. Is this a possible solution? Could we see this spread to other parts of the gig economy, in tech in particular?
Well, the gig economy is a term that gets widely used and misused. If what you mean is people who are obtaining work through electronic mediated platforms, like Uber or something like that, that represents 1% or 1.5% of all employment. It's not really that big a deal. And all of self-employment is 7 or 8% of all the people employed are self-employed. That really hasn't risen much in 20, 30 years. But that doesn't mean these workers don't have problems, and I think Uber drivers actually are employees. They are misclassified. Right. And there's big battles in California.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. That's putting it mildly. Okay, thanks very much to my colleague June Grasso and to Lawrence Michel of the Economic Policy Institute. Coming up, it's Sports Friday on Balance of Power, and so we're going to talk to Eben Novy-Williams of the Business of Sports. That's next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting...
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What sea sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking, and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and tune in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
This Monday, February 24th, the sports world celebrates the lives of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna with a memorial at Staples Center in Los Angeles.
It was my dream to be a Los Angeles Laker.
Buckle up for Kobe Bryant. The Lakers repeat back-to-back titles.
Wherever you are Monday morning, you can listen to live coverage of Kobe Bryant's memorial on TuneIn. Beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, search Remembering Kobe Bryant to honor the basketball legend and his family.
Mamba out. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
From onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pelletta. Down Friday, stocks are sinking. Gold rallying, Treasury yields tumbling as investors take a defensive stance amid renewed concern about the economic impact of the coronavirus. Chip makers leading losses for the S&P 500 index. S&P down 38, a drop right now of 1.1%. Nasdaq down 180. That is a decline of 1.9%. The Dow tumbling 268 points, lower by 0.9%. 10 years up 16 seconds, yield 1.46%, 30-year yield 1.90%. We've got gold surging $28 the ounce to $16.47. That's an advance of 1.7%. West Texas Intermediate crude down 0.9%, $53.38 a barrel. Recapping, U.S. stocks lower on this Friday with the S&P down 39, down 1.2%. I'm Charlie Pellett. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of power continues. And once again, here's your host, David Weston.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pellett. Live from the Interactive Broker Studio, this is Balance of Power. I'm David Weston. It's been a big week in sports, with baseball continuing to come to terms, or not, with that cheating scandal, football on the brink or not of a new collective bargaining agreement. And the one thing we know for sure is there's a really big fight tomorrow night that we're going to talk about as well. We welcome now Bloomberg's Scott Soshnick and Eben Novy-Williams. They are co-hosts of the Business of Sports podcast and radio program. So let's start with scandal. We have Rob Manfred, the somewhat challenged, I think it's fair to say, commissioner of Major League Baseball. And this is what he had to say about, and specifically the question about whether, in fact, the Astros continued cheating into the 2017 postseason.
The garbage can signaling went on in the postseason. I mean, there was conflicting evidence on that point, but, In an investigation, you often have conflicting evidence, and it was my view that the more credible evidence was that they continued to use the scheme in the postseason.
Now, this is after the players denied they ever did that in the postseason. But does Rob Manfred have a grasp of the facts here? Does he know what happened?
He seems to know what happened. Again, on the big scale, we know they cheated.
Yes, that we know.
The big question, David, this is the big question. Does the admission, does the fact that it's all being out in the sunlight now, was that worth giving the players the free pass? Would you have gotten to this point had he not offered immunity to the players? That's the question, because then you have to decide, if you're stonewalled during the investigation and you do not reveal all of these things, then where do you stand? But as you know, the majority of the players are really upset that there's no punishment for the players. Great, they admitted it, they cheated, they won, they're champions. Now what?
But Manfred's position, as I understand it, is we wouldn't have known if I didn't give them immunity. It's the only way to get to the facts, right?
Well, you did have people, former players there, detailing the plan, so you would have had some testimony.
Yeah, it's kind of unclear how much baseball could have figured out if not for the cooperation from the union and the players that they did speak to. It's also unclear how good a job baseball did in investigating it the first time, right? Yeah. There is all this talk right now about buzzers. Were they used? Were they not? If you read Manfred's report, buzzers aren't mentioned at all. So, I think there's some question there as well. And don't forget, he's still looking at the Boston Red Sox. There's a report that's going to come out at some point in the next, could be even a couple days, that is going to detail what the Boston Red Sox were doing with technology and sign stealing. This is a big problem, and baseball has not gotten ahead of it, at least not yet.
Well, how about going forward? Is this going to revolutionize the extent to which people can use technology in baseball games? Videotapes, things like that?
Yeah,
is it going to ban this?
I think it's going to de-revolutionize the way.
You're going the other way.
Yeah, baseball's done a pretty good job in the past few years of kind of opening up the use of technology on the bench, letting people look at iPads, letting bench coaches make decisions using in-game technology.
But let's be real, it used to be these giant folders and reams, and they're going through that. And that's a little ludicrous that they would need to go that route now. I mean, you can just flip over in your tablet and get your immediate info. But Evan seems to think that that may happen because of this cheat.
Yeah, I think you may see them say, you know what? We went too far in letting technology on the bench and on the sidelines. We're going to claw things back a little bit.
So let's go to football. Are we going to have a collective bargaining agreement or not? Because as I understand it, the owners said, okay, fine, we like the deal you got. And now we just got news that the executive committee that had negotiated for the players have voted against the deal that they negotiated 6-5.
Yeah, that executive committee is charged with making a recommendation to the rank and file. And then DeMaurice Smith, the executive director, will allow the 1,000+ players in the league to determine by a simple majority, do you wish to agree to these terms? At least they got the chance to float the trial balloon out there and see what the terms were and dip a toe in and see what the court of public opinion said. It seems to me a very rudimentary examination of the response was, for players, one, you need more time to dissect everything in here, and two, if the owners are this gung-ho for this deal, then you're being hoodwinked.
Yeah, on the other hand, if you're Roger Goodell, you say, I'm negotiating with myself now. I put my best offer forward. Now you guys say, no, now I got to go back and get a better offer. I'm negotiating with myself.
Yeah, it also kind of begs the question, there was a time when I think the executive committee and the player reps who are also speaking today had the ability to just say no point blank. And instead of having that authority there, as Scott said, they're going to give this vote no matter what to the 2,100 current active NFL players to vote on it. And I do wonder if the vocal people who are against this deal are your big-time stars, and if a majority of NFL players, the guys who are on short-term deals, who might not be in the league very long, if they see a little bit of this revenue gain and say, that sounds pretty good to me, I'm willing to do this now, then the big-name stars can get overvoted, essentially.
With presumably a big pot of gold sitting out there, which is the new TV deals. That's what this is
an understatement. It's all about television money, David. That's why the owners are so insistent that they need to get this done now, because these networks that are being asked to pony up tens of billions of dollars, they want to know that there will be labor peace for the foreseeable future.
And let's not forget, the current deal that they have has another year on it. It's not as though, we're 3 or 4 months away from a lockout. They can go another full year, another full season on the current agreement. So there's not as much time sensitivity as I think maybe it feels like right now, just because this is happening right now.
So since we're talking about pots of gold, let's talk about this Wilder Fury 2 fight on Saturday. How big that's going to be. I know you guys have, right, on your Business and Sports podcast, you've got the
Bob Arum coming in.
Yeah, exactly.
Bob Arum has done everybody from Muhammad Ali to Mike Tyson.
He's worked with everyone.
About heavyweight bouts. And this, we're told, are going to do about $200 million.
There you go.
It's not a Mayweather-Pacquiao number, but for a heavyweight fight in a sport that has been seen in the decline, that's pretty darn good.
It sounds like this is the biggest heavyweight fight of the past 20 years. Which, as you guys know, boxing for a long time was all heavyweights. That was the weight class everyone cared about.
Imagine that. No Jerry Cooney, and we're doing $200
million. It's not been that way. But yeah, $200 million is a very nice number. Expecting around about $160 million from U.S. pay-per-view buys, and then rest of the world. You throw in some sponsorship, you throw in some merchandise, you throw in the ticket sales, which will be about $16 million, and you get up to that $200 million.
It's a great media litmus test because DAZN is out there selling subscriptions to boxing, but now this is the old school model. Pay-per-view model. It's a great litmus test of old versus new and see what's.
So Jason Kelly's here for Bloomberg Business Week. You can weigh in, Jason.
Well,
paying $80.
I am not, but I'm fascinated by what Scott just pointed out. I mean, your old buddy John Skipper. We just talked to him down in Miami. You're right. This is a huge test. I have a question for you guys briefly before we talk about the show. XFL doing okay?
Oh, that's a good question.
Medium. What do you
watched
think?
a little bit.
As you would expect, week 1 numbers very good.
Right.
People wanted to take a peek, tire kick. The numbers did come down in week 2. You have to see week 6, week 7. Yeah. I think it's also tied, by the way, to WWE's performance. Yeah. Vince McMahon is funding this. If WWE stock continues to tumble, you wonder what is his tolerance for losses.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the two are tied.
Yeah. So I'm going to say thank you to Evan Noble Williams and Scott Soshnick. We'll all be listening to your podcast. Trust me. But in the meantime, Jason, you got to tell us about what's coming up.
Well, we're going to be looking into the market reaction to the virus. It seems to be entering a new phase. We're going to talk about John Deere. Deere actually bucking the trend. See what I did there? We've also got the CEO of a cannabis company called Golden Seed talking about the expansion of that business. And we're going to talk about yachts because it's Friday.
Yeah, it's a way to get into the weekend. No question. Okay, thanks so much to Jason Kelly. He'll be here with Carol Masser for Bloomberg Business Week. That does it for Balance of Power for this week. I'm David Weston. Thank you for listening.
That saying, success breeds success.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
This Monday, February 24th, the sports world celebrates the lives of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna with a memorial at Staples Center in Los Angeles.
It was my dream to be a Los Angeles Laker.
Buckle up for Kobe Bryant! The Lakers repeat back-to-back titles!
Wherever you are Monday morning, you can listen to live coverage of Kobe Bryant's memorial on TuneIn. Beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, search Remembering Kobe Bryant to honor the basketball legend and his family.
Mamba out.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio, streaming on YouTube. Welcome to Bloomberg Business Week. It is Friday, February 21st, 2020. Carol Masser along with Jason Kelly. And it is definitely a new phase for the coronavirus, and we are looking at its impact. We're seeing stocks down, gold surging, treasury yields tumbling. There are concerns about the economic impact.
And if you look across the most read stories of the day, Carol, clearly this is what is capturing everyone's attention, both across the entire day and even from the last hour. People really focusing on what this may mean.
All right, we're going to get to that over the next few hours and so much more. First up, though, let's set the scene with your top business stories and a look at that trading day. Here is Charlie Pellet.
Thank you very much. Happy Friday to you both. We have got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all slumping, as you mentioned. 39-point drop right now in the S&P 500 index, down 1.1%. Dow Jones Industrial Average moving lower as well. It is down 265 points right now. For the Dow, that is down 0.9%, getting close to the lows of the day. NASDAQ slumping 188 points, down 1.9%. Stay with us right through the closing bell to see how things shake out. We've got the 10-year up 14.30 seconds, yield 1.46%. 30-year yield 1.91%. Gold up 1.7%. 16.46 the ounce there, higher by $27 the ounce today. A pullback for West Texas Intermediate crude down 0.8%, 53.43 a barrel. So again, recapping here, a move lower on this Friday with the S&P down 38, down 1.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks a lot. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly and Carol Masser. And as we think about a market that is quite distracted by the virus, we're also looking at the performance of Deere, sort of bucking that trend, as it were, Carol. We're also going to talk about cannabis.
We are, and this is an interesting company. They're talking about Golden Seed. Their CEO is going to stop by our studio. They're looking to sell shares to the public, but not in a typical IPO. So we're going to hear about the industry and their stance in terms of how do you bring investors into this market. We're also going to talk about, it's been a busy week, guys, on so many different fronts, pretty heavy week, if you will. So we're going to kind of wrap up with some lighter fare. We're going to talk about buying and selling, buying and investing in yachts.
Which you have some skepticism around the idea of a boat as an investment, as a yachts lady yourself.
A yachts lady.
A yachts lady.
Well, as
woman.
We said in the newsroom, the joke is, what is a boat? It's a hole in the water that you throw money into.
Exactly. So. All right. We're going to get to that as we move along. But first, let's set the Business Week agenda. Elena Popina is here, equity markets reporter for Bloomberg, as is Dave Wilson, stocks editor, author of the chart and stock of the day. Dave, set the tone for us here. What do we need to know as we start to wrap up this trading week?
Well, the big thing is today, coronavirus really hit home for a change. And it resulted from the numbers that came out of market just before, into the trading day. The purchasing managers index they compiled. So in other words, how companies sort of see the landscape for their business. And so you had a decline in the services and the composite below 50. And that's a sign that, you may end up with an economy in contraction rather than expansion. So that's when people, got concerned because, if you think about fourth quarter results, companies looking ahead, either they didn't even bother to factor the coronavirus into their forecast or they minimized the effects. I mean, we saw a lot of companies be able to rise after their results, even if they talked about coronavirus hurting them. Right. So, you put it all together, and today it's like the focus is on how much of an effect the coronavirus could have.
Here's the point. When people are dismissive of these headlines with the virus, it depends on what that headline is. And today we had a jump in coronaviruses, cases, I should say, in Iran specifically. And so those cases have no direct link to China, according to the World Health Organization. You also see it accelerating in South Korea and Italy. So all of a sudden the story starts to change, and maybe, Elena, we don't have our hands around it.
Yeah, Absolutely. And I wanted to talk a little bit about specific sectors that got absolutely hammered by the coronavirus. If you look at lithium producers, these companies are down more than 10% today. I want to focus on one company, Livent Corp, which just said after the bell yesterday that, look, car makers are not interested in, producing more cars because the decline is really outstanding right now. We have a global oversupply. We're not sure about what's going on in China, whether they would need lithium supply or not. These companies are down 10 to 20% today, one of the biggest losers in all of the U.S. equity market. And this decline can become even more pronounced as we have no certainty about what's going to happen in China and what the economic activity is going to be like.
Yeah, I think, ifs and buts. We just don't know at this point. There's too many questions out there. So, Dave, you're someone who's watched so many different market cycles. I mean, this is a moment where there's a lot of uncertainty again, or we have a big uncertainty out there. And until we have some clarity on it, you can see companies kind of retrench a little bit, maybe even investors retrench. We're certainly seeing it with the rally that we've seen in gold.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, up around $1,650 an ounce today. That's one piece of it. Another, the record low yield on 30-year treasuries. That's another piece of it. The dollar not doing so well today after having been strong for the last few months. That's another piece of it. And then you look at what's happening with U.S. stocks, and what's higher? It's the more defensive areas of the market: real estate, utilities, consumer staples, food, beverage, tobacco, basically. So it's all consistent, at least today, with the idea that risk is the focus, and investors are trying to get away from it a bit.
Two things I want to mention: that 10-year note right now yielding 146, and it was actually lower today. But the other thing is, and Elena, we've seen this on a Friday heading into a long weekend because the virus story is still live, if you will. Investors are afraid to kind of take a position because if things get worse over the weekend. But you wanted to jump in here.
Yes, exactly. And I wanted to say that utilities are now the best sector of the year, utilities and real estate. And it was not the case even earlier this week. It was technology that was the biggest gainer. And that is very strange when the market is at a record high. That's not typical for the market at these levels.
But so is information technology. So those, high flyers, right, are still continuing to gain this year.
Yeah. Well, what's even stranger about the utility stocks?
What?
There were results out of Con Edison.
Yeah.
And the shares are down more than 4%. So people didn't like their forecast for this year. So there's the business side, and then there's the get away from risk and go for maybe a little dividend income side. And so the utilities are benefiting from the latter at the perhaps the ignorance of the former.
It'll be interesting to hear from Mr. Buffett, Warren Buffett, who's going to put out his letter this weekend. We're going to have a preview of that later on. But obviously, everyone looks to the big investors at moments like this for exactly the sort of perspective that we're asking Dave and Elena for, in terms of what does this remind you of?
Yeah.
How do you act? What do you do? Where do you invest?
Well, and is it a new phase that we're going to have to be in? A phase that we might be in for a little bit longer than everybody anticipated, and then it starts to have longer lasting impacts. It starts to change those numbers for 2020.
All right. Our thanks to Elena Popina, equity markets reporter for Bloomberg, and Dave Wilson, stocks editor for Bloomberg. He'll be back with us in not too long for his chart and stock of the day. Let's do the Bloomberg Businessweek bite of the day, Carol.
Yep.
It's one number that tells us a lot. Today's number, 17.
NFL owners are considering extending the regular season from 16 to 17 games as part of their new collective bargaining agreement proposal. Also under the new CBA, the number of teams who make the playoffs would increase from 12 to 14, 7 from each conference. That's how it works out, which could happen as soon as the 2020 season. Now, NFL owners meeting on Thursday in New York City to talk about negotiations with the Players Association about a new CBA before the current 10-year deal expires. The owners' proposal will be discussed by players via a conference call today, but that would be interesting, and I actually think it would be welcomed. I think some people feel like the football season just kind of flies.
Yeah, I think that's true, but
I do wonder about the players getting
worry
hurt,
about
though.
Player safety. I mean, that to me is the biggest thing. You hear constantly from players that, by mid-season, much less late in the season, that they're just so beat up.
Yeah.
So you wonder how much pushback they're going to get when the players do weigh in. All right, coming up, we're going to talk about the economic effects, the continuing economic effects of the virus. I'm actually getting a message right now. You and I are from Carl Riccadonna about some comments the CDC is making. So we'll bring you that and more coming up. First, let's get to Bob Moon. He's got your world national headlines.
And more on that story. An unexplained and UN health officials say worrisome development has cropped up in the way the coronavirus cases are spreading outside China. Just as cases of the virus appear to be climbing more slowly inside China, partly because authorities have switched back to reporting only suspected and lab-confirmed cases. Outside that country, there are new cases turning up with no clear links to travel in China or other confirmed cases. The World Health Organization's Director General, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, points to cases that have just started turning up in the Persian Gulf area.
We're also concerned about the increase in cases in the Islamic Republic of Iran, where there are now 18 cases and 4 deaths in just the past 2 days.
China is now reporting 892 new cases there, bringing its total to more than 75,500 cases. That includes 118 new deaths in China. Intelligence officials have warned lawmakers that Russia is interfering in the 2020 election campaign to help President Trump get elected, according to 3 officials familiar with the closed-door briefing. But Trump himself is dismissing his own intelligence information as a hoax, pushing back with a post on Twitter accusing Democrats of launching a disinformation campaign. The U.S. and the Taliban have agreed to sign a peace deal next week aimed at ending 18 years of war in Afghanistan and bringing U.S. troops home, wrapping up America's longest-running conflict. The planned signing depends on the success of a week-long nationwide reduction in violence agreement. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
2 people who are as fascinated by the markets as you are.
What's your sense of the competitive landscape in the cloud business?
Lisa Abramowitz.
People were talking about potential regulatory pressure.
And Paul Sweeney.
Are you seeing flows into ESG ETFs?
Bloomberg Markets.
What's your main conversation today with some of these corporate executives?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
They're spending a lot of money there.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
The Bloomberg.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Oh. Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
Pancake Day is flipping fun. Pancake Day is Stella. This day will be a yummy one.
'Cause pancakes love Nutella. Pancake Day is nearly here. Gather friends and family to enjoy some delicious pancakes on Tuesday the 25th of February. And don't forget, pancakes love Nutella.
Fill the trolley with your favourite brands for less at Asda. Mix and match across beauty products like Tresemme, Sure and Simple and get any two for only £3. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Prices range from £1.50 to £2.45.
The government and the NHS are prepared to deal with coronavirus. You can help too. The best way to protect yourself and others is to wash your hands with soap and water or use a sanitizer gel regularly throughout the day. Catch your cough or sneeze in a tissue, bin it, and wash your hands. If you have recently arrived back from specified areas, follow the returning traveller advice. Check the list of areas and find out more at nhs.uk/coronavirus.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What sea sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
This Monday, February 24th, the sports world celebrates the lives of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna with a memorial at Staples Center in Los Angeles.
It was my dream to be a Los Angeles Laker. Buckle up for Kobe Bryant! The Lakers repeat back-to-back titles!
Wherever you are Monday morning, you can listen to live coverage of Kobe Bryant's memorial on TuneIn. Beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, search Remembering Kobe Bryant to honor the basketball legend and his family.
Mamba out.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. It is a down Friday with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all declining as investors rush to safety. We've got the 10-year up 15.30 seconds, yield 1.46%. The 30-year, 1.91%. The Dow moving lower by 281 points, down 1%. S&P 500 index down 42, lower by 1.3%. And NASDAQ slumping 203 points right now. That is a drop of 2.1%. Bottom line, we've got the S&P on track for a losing week. Stocks are sinking, gold surging, treasury yields tumbling as investors take a defensive stance amid renewed concern about the economic impact of the coronavirus amid reports that it is spreading outside of China. Gold is up 1.6%, $16.46 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude oil down 1.2%, $53.24 a barrel. Again, recapping, the S&P down 42, a drop of 1.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. Charlie there, of course, detailing the latest on the virus and concerns about it spreading and in kind of different ways now has certainly put some pressure on the investment markets. In fact, South Korea's cases have climbed past 200. The tallies for Singapore and Japan have topped 85. There are now some 600 plus from a quarantine cruise ship in Japan. New cases popping up in the Middle East and Italy. China is still, though, accounting for the vast majority. But nonetheless, anxiety is certainly creeping into the financial markets and what some see could be a little bit of a doomed economic outlook because of this. Tom Orlik is chief economist of Bloomberg Economics. He joins us from our 99.1 studio in Washington, D.C. Maybe doomed outlook is too severe, Tom, so forgive me for that. But how do you see it in terms of the latest virus news and what it means for the economic outlook, global economic outlook?
Well, one of the interesting things in the last couple of days, Carol, is that we've started to see the first real economic numbers out of China and Korea, which give us a sense of how this is playing out in terms of the impact on growth. So we had a business survey out of China. The Sales Managers Index doesn't normally get a lot of attention, but because it comes out early and because it's giving us the first read on the virus, this time it has received more attention, and that shows quite a sharp drop in China's growth in February. And then we have an early reading on exports from Korea. Korea publishes a 20-day export number, so we know how much Korea has been selling and buying from the rest of the world in the first 20 days of February. The headline numbers there weren't catastrophic, but when you dug into the details and you looked at what Korea is doing with China, there was contraction in exports and contraction in imports. And I think those numbers, combined with the concern you mentioned about cases spreading around China and around the world, are what's driving some of the additional market anxiety we're seeing today.
And what do you make of sort of where China is domestically on this, Tom? Because, you know, part of what we're continuing to see, whether it's from Hasbro or Hilton or Hormel, you know, like all of these companies in many ways are talking about their business there. You know, Hasbro saying office and third-party factory closures are something they're dealing with. Hilton saying 150 hotels, 33,000 rooms are closed. I mean, that's measurable.
Yeah, so certainly, Jason, we are looking at a severe blow to China's first quarter growth. We don't know exactly how big that's going to be, but one striking thing is that if you look at the evolution of forecasts for China's first quarter growth, they're getting lower and lower. So at the end of January, people were saying, you know what, maybe China could grow at just 4.5% in the first quarter. That would already be a record low. If you look at the latest numbers coming out from some sell-side economists, people are talking about Chinese growth at less than 3% in the first quarter. And on a sequential basis, so the quarter-on-quarter basis, which most economies like the US and the UK and Japan use to measure growth, that would mean that China is actually shrinking. So we're certainly looking at a tangible negative impact. The reason I'm not succumbing to extremes of pessimism just yet is basically because China can close things down really effectively, and we see that with the quarantine in Hubei and other measures around the country. I'm betting they can also open things up really quickly as well. And at some point, fingers crossed, we're all hoping this outbreak gets under control, the public health risk becomes manageable, and China's leaders are going to say, okay, now it's time to get the economy humming again. And when that happens, I think things are going to open up just as quickly as they shut down.
Yeah, I agree with you that I think as soon as we, things turn around, you can quickly reopen up everything and kind of get back to normal to some extent. I do wonder, though, Tom, the cover of Business Week magazine this week is about fragile China. And China, in many ways, probably better than most, how much it has been leveraging its society. There's a lot more debt, consumer debt, household debt, much more than before. They have the largest banking system in the world. Again, this is a government that when China gets into trouble, careful, they open up their pockets and help out. Now, they've been taking steps to reduce some of that leverage exposure, but at the same time, because of the virus, they've kind of had to reopen it, right? The government's had to reopen up its pockets to kind of help out businesses and so on and so forth. And I do wonder if that could be troublesome for China down the road.
Yeah, I think you put your finger on a key risk there, Carol, and we saw that crystallizing in the case of HNA, the troubled airline and conglomerate, which was already saddled with a very large amount of debt, and then, of course, faced a crunch down in revenue because the virus really hit travel around the country, so no one was buying airline tickets. And Bloomberg News is reporting that the government's considering taking that company into its own control. Now, the question is, could that happen on a larger scale? Could a month of very low growth or even a contraction in the economy really crystallize some of those debt risks? My bet is that China's policymakers have enough of control over the banks and enough of control over the corporates to keep things under control, at least for the first quarter. If the outbreak doesn't come under control heading into the rest of the year, then that's going to be a real concern.
And there is concern because the CDC did a briefing call, too, as well, with a much more bearish outlook for the United States. Tom Orlick, as always, Bloomberg Economics, we appreciate your insight.
All right, I want to bring you some headlines crossing the Bloomberg right now related to the trial of Harvey Weinstein. The Weinstein jury asking if they can be hung on 2 counts, indicating they are hung on the most serious charge, saying they're unanimous on other counts. We'll bring you more as that comes across, but obviously a very, very closely watched trial.
Right, it's the 4th day of deliberation. So we'll be keeping you up to speed on that one. You are listening to Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Investors are taking no chances ahead of the weekend, selling stocks amid growing worries about the coronavirus epidemic. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 266, the S&P 500 down 39, the Nasdaq Composite down 195. T-Mobile and Sprint are a big step closer to completing their merger. The companies have agreed to new terms that reflect the slide in Sprint shares since the deal was announced. The merger could close by April 1st. California is backing away slightly from a mandate requiring solar panels on most new homes. Regulators have voted to allow homes to get power from solar farms instead of rooftop panels. The vote is a setback for panel installers. It's a big weekend for fans of Warren Buffett. He releases his annual letter tomorrow. Investors will read it closely, looking for clues about his strategy after Berkshire Hathaway saw its worst annual stock performance in a decade. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions. What if you could...
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Oh.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Fill the trolley with your favourite brands for less at Asda. Mix and match across beauty products like Tresemme, Sure and Simple and get any 2 for only £3. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Prices range from £1.50 to £2.45.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Tomorrow, the sports world celebrates the lives of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna with a memorial at Staples Center in Los Angeles.
It was my dream to be a Los Angeles Laker.
Buckle up for Kobe! The Lakers repeat back-to-back titles!
Wherever you are tomorrow morning, you can listen live to Kobe's celebration of life on TuneIn. Beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. Search Celebrating the Life of Kobe Bryant to honor the basketball legend and his family.
What can I say? Mamba out.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
We are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
You've heard the phrase, the voice of experience. There's actually more than one of them.
It's really a fascinating company.
The voices of experience tell their stories to Barry Ritholtz on Masters in Business, Saturdays at 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Coming up, we're going to check in with one of our faves, our pal, our colleague, Alex Steele. She's got an amazing news special all about EVs.
You're working your tail off, man.
We kind of talk about this topic a lot, so I am very interested to get her take on this.
All right, looking forward to it. First up, though, back to your top business stories, and let's get an update on the trading day. Where are we, Charlie Pellet?
We are down across the board, but first, this headline from the Bloomberg Professional Service. Jurors at the Harvey Weinstein trial say they are unanimous on other counts, but they are indicating they are hung on the most serious charges. They have asked the judge if they can be hung on 2 counts. Developing story we're following for you. We'll have more details as they become available. Right now, it is a down day on Wall Street. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ very much in retreat. S&P down 36, a drop of 1.1%. Stocks are sinking, gold surging, treasury yields tumbling as investors take a defensive stance amid renewed concern about the economic impact of the coronavirus as it spreads outside of China. The Dow down 235 now, down 0.8%. As I mentioned, S&P down 36, down 1.1%. NASDAQ lower by 186, down by 1.9%. European Central Bank Chief Economist Philip Lane expects the euro area economy to bounce back from the coronavirus outbreak, playing down concerns of the region could slip into a downturn that requires another interest rate cut. He made the comments this morning in an interview with our Bloomberg's Michael McKee.
Let's see how quickly the spread of the virus is contained. The sooner that happens, then the more confidence that this will be indeed something that is mostly in quarter one, maybe spilling over into quarter two.
The $35 bag fee is gaining traction as U.S. airlines contend with the financial fallout of the grounding of the 737 MAX jet and a viral pandemic that has decimated travel to China. United Continental Holdings says it will increase the charge for passengers' first and second checked bags by $5 up to $35 and $45 respectively. Recapping, stocks lower, S&P down 36, down 1.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks a lot. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week.
Okay, you might be at a wedding, or you might be getting ready for a great
Did you just hop out of your seat and start doing the electric slide?
Come on,
everybody. Come on, Charlie.
Come up here. Exactly. Tonight at 9 p.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg TV, an in-depth look at the future of electric vehicles. It's called EVs on the Brink of Change. It's anchored and reported by Bloomberg Daybreak America anchor and host of Commodities Edge, Alex Steele, who joins us in our Interactive Broker studio. Man, you've been working on this for a while.
Like a little over 2 years, so like not too long.
2 years.
Yeah.
A lot's happened though in 2 years.
Right, because usually also if you do one of these things, as you know, Carol, like you go into the field and you take a camera and a crew and then you come back and put together a special, but that's not what we did here. We basically outsourced all the material globally from different continents, different regions, and like went through scores of interviews over the last 2 years to get the right voices for it, to give you a complete story. If you didn't know anything about it, now you do. If you know a lot about EVs, now you know different angles, and like hopefully you have a really good idea of who wins, who loses, and how you make money.
All right, so you knew a lot about it going in. What surprised you as you went along and all this stuff started coming in?
Honestly, the longer-term viability of Tesla. So it felt like at some point Tesla's going to roll over and like the GMs and the Fords are going to be able to take their amazing manufacturing carness and make that into an EV powerhouse. And what surprised me is that not at all the case. They are still like skiing uphill when it comes to pouring money into it and not getting any profits yet. The traditional guys. And Tesla's inroads into China are tremendous. And China has hundreds of EV car makers. And Tesla's just one of them. And they're way ahead. They're just way ahead.
It is staggering how Tesla so quickly was able to build a facility in China. And that just does not happen.
And they got subsidies for it, and they got help from the government. Like also not happening, especially in the middle of a trade war.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so what are you seeing from the traditional car makers? Where are they making, dare I say, inroads? Is there, what's the hope for them?
The hope is that investors will be patient enough while they spend bazillions of dollars before they turn a profit on these cars. They need consumers to buy the cars. To do that, they need to have a lot more cars to sell. To do that, they need to partner with each other to cut down on costs and help with like synergies in order to build the cars. And all of that is happening while you need to build infrastructure because you can't charge these things. The range fear is like a real thing there.
Yeah, totally. Who's the most viable after Tesla? Like I feel like Tesla's like in their own little league, and then who do you look at?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I have a good read on that, to be honest. Like when talking to a lot of experts, it feels like all the players in the OEM space, traditional car makers, won't exist like in 5 or 10 years because of this. They're not all going to survive. But no one really knows who will be standing. We know who's left behind, and also makes a difference who's in mobility, so like who's in ride sharing, and who's going to be in AVs, autonomous vehicles, and that's going to be the next thing.
So when you look at it from the consumer perspective and the consumer adoption perspective, where are we in that regard, and do you see any obvious sort of tipping points, either types of people or countries or geographies that is going to make it mass?
2 things have to happen. subsidies have to continue,
Mm-hmm.
number one. So that's going to be one to watch. Number two is that the battery costs have to come down.
Right.
Whether that's like a new type of battery, like a fuel cell technology or hydrogen fuel technology or something along those lines, or literally the battery costs just come down enough that it makes you want to buy it.
Right.
No one really is buying it out of like the goodness of their heart.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like $1. Maybe you are, but like most of them are not. It's $1 and cents thing. You need those two things
Unless
to happen.
unless you're a Tesla devotee, like that, just you're all in on everything.
Right.
Elon
And when
Musk.
that happens, one or the other, that's when you're going to see the switch. The earliest people say are like 2024 is when it'll be comparable to the internal combustion engine, and then you can make a real economic decision.
Where's China in all of this? As you said, they've got a lot of EV makers.
Yeah, so you will not get mass adoption without China.
Right.
Like, hands down. And the difference with China versus other countries is like it's a mandate. Like when you see the president like speaking at their NPC and he's talking about like their life depends on climate, he means it.
Right.
So that's a thing. So even if subsidies roll off, subsidies are going to go to infrastructure. Like they're in it. It's just a matter of how they weed through the oversupply of the car manufacturers, the money, those companies that are going bust to get there.
Well, and they have the ability to build that infrastructure kind of from the ground up. I just think about the cities they're building in terms of AVs, and just they can do it much more easily than we can because we've got this existing infrastructure that's not really supportive of all of this.
And that's not just China saying that. You talk to some U.S. experts who basically say, watch this space in China.
Yeah, and basically saying that, this is definitely not me, this is through reporting for sure, that if a U.S. rolls back their subsidies, which has been happening, etc., that we lose.
Yeah.
Europe's kind of all in too, but it's a tricky road for them also because obviously look at their PMIs, like they're still struggling too. So if we lose on that sense.
9 o'clock tonight?
Yes, and it'll air tomorrow at 6 a.m.
Oh, well, that's what I'll be watching.
You'll be up with Alice.
Totally.
So you really will be. So
yeah, 100%.
You should just email me.
You know what? She's going to be a future electric car buyer.
That's
I would imagine, right?
Yeah, probably.
So, I mean, she needs to be
I'm
smart
dying
about
to
this.
buy an EV.
Yeah.
I just haven't quite felt like I've seen the right one.
Yeah.
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah,
Cool.
just be patient. Patience.
I'm not patient.
Alex Steele, thank you so much. Always great to
Watch
see
it,
you.
everyone. Watch it. Set your DVRs.
Let's get to Bob Mood now, World and National Headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, the jury in movie mogul Harvey Weinstein's rape trial in New York is reporting some division inside the deliberating room. They're asking the judge if they can be hung on the two most serious counts of predatory sexual assault, which could subject the 67-year-old defendant to life in prison. In their fourth day of deliberations, the jurors say they're unanimous on the other charges of rape and a criminal sexual act. And now we're hearing the judge has asked the jury to continue trying to reach final verdicts in Weinstein's trial. The spreading coronavirus is confounding UN health experts who can't explain some of the new cases showing up outside China. They have no clear links to travel in China or to other confirmed cases. And the head of the World Health Organization calls that worrisome. In a teleconference with reporters, meantime, Dr. Nancy Messonnier of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention voiced concern there's as yet no vaccine or medicine for treatment. And she said that makes COVID-19 a tremendous public health threat to the U.S. That puts health officials in the position of trying to buy time.
We're not seeing community spread here in the United States yet, but it's very possible, even likely, that it may eventually happen. Our goal continues to be slowing the introduction of the virus into the U.S. This buys us more time to prepare our communities for more cases and possibly sustained spread.
For that reason, she says, it's important the government is taking aggressive action to prevent its spread. Global News 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777.
A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Are you interested in a
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Tomorrow, the sports world celebrates the lives of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna with a memorial at Staples Center in Los Angeles.
It was my dream to be a Los Angeles Laker.
Buckle up for Kobe! The Lakers repeat back-to-back titles!
Wherever you are tomorrow morning, you can listen live to Kobe's celebration of life on TuneIn. Beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. Search Celebrating the Life of Kobe Bryant to honor the basketball legend and his family.
What can I say? Mamba out.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Among financial investment firms, for the sixth straight time, we think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients, and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us number 1 in client support, number 1 in firm leadership, number 1 in operational support, number 1 in compensation, number 1 in professional development support, and number 1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor, is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellett. It is a down Friday. Stocks on track for a losing week. Stocks very close to the lows of the day right now. Gold surging, treasury yields tumbling as investors take a defensive stance amid renewed concern about the economic impact of the coronavirus as it spreads outside of China. We've got the S&P down 39, lower by 1.2%. The Dow's down 259 points. That is a drop of 0.9%. And NASDAQ is down 188 points, a drop there of 1.9%. 10-year up 13.30 seconds, yield 1.47%. Yield on the 30-year 1.91%. We've got gold up $24 the ounce now, an advance of 1.5%. $16.43 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 0.8%, 53.43 a barrel. Recapping, stocks lower, S&P down 39 points now, a drop of 1.2%. I'm Charlie Pellett, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
I'm independent. You love this stuff. This is independent funk. I'm getting.
Go ahead, call it.
Oh, no, I was just going to talk about how people on the West Coast go and watch our television show at midnight on a Friday night.
They totally
who's
do.
not doing that is really the question.
Not?
Yeah, exactly.
Because then you'd miss stories like this and others.
Yeah. Stars like Annie Massa and Joel Weber.
Totally. So,
often on our show.
Put it on your calendar, folks. Put it on your phone. The era of independent online brokers is over. Excuse me. Here with all the details. Still getting over my cold. Annie Massa, investing reporter at Bloomberg News, and Joel Weber, editor of Bloomberg Business Week. They're both in our Interactive Brokers studio.
Regretting walking in.
I know. They're
think
like,
at this
what
point.
the heck did I walk into?
All right, so this was a newsy week, Annie, with E-Trade getting sold to Morgan Stanley.
Huge.
Put this in the context of all this great work you've been doing over the past couple months, sort of helping us understand this fast-changing business of big money.
Yeah, it's been a really active couple of months in M&A and especially in the brokerage space. So we wrote this story kind of as an obituary, honestly, to the discount brokerage era. And these are the companies like E-Trade and Charles Schwab and TD Ameritrade that came up in the 80s and 90s, really in the dot-com boom. And now that you're seeing E-Trade finally being sold off, finally finding a buyer in Morgan Stanley, it's kind of marking the end of like the age when you can be an independent, scrappy discount brokerage at all.
Which we've seen coming for a while. It's like we were going to have consolidation in this space. And so in many ways, the writing has always been on the wall. What do you make of the Morgan Stanley part of this equation, though?
That was a bit of a surprise. So after Charles Schwab swooped in to buy TD Ameritrade last fall, there was a wide kind of like knowledge that E-Trade would have to look for what it could do, probably potentially find a buyer. And there have been years and years and years of speculation about who might buy E-Trade. So Morgan Stanley coming in was interesting. That hadn't been such a widely circulated idea, but the businesses do make some sense together. What they were saying on the call is that Morgan Stanley wants that access to your more retail kind of audience with the lower minimums in their accounts and the wider distribution network. So they'll add that onto their wealth management division.
Jack Ablin in your story says it was an act of desperation by Morgan Stanley.
That's right. He had a kind of salty quote in there saying that, you know, if you're a Morgan Stanley customer, you probably still have
a full cable
TV package. That was a little bit of a ding.
Wow.
But it is a clash of cultures in that way.
Ablin-esque.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of summarizing the older guard, more mainstream Wall Street of Morgan Stanley coming together with, we tried to capture like just how kooky E-Trade was in some of its years, really growing up. So, I mean, everyone remembers like the Super Bowl ads for E-Trade, all those.
Talking baby.
Yeah, the talking babies are super famous.
That was a great.
Chimps.
Remember we were talking about Ally McBeal yesterday because remember they used to use the talking creepy baby.
So that moment looks like it's past, right? RIP, throw some dirt on it. But like, what does that mean kind of going forward for retail?
I think it really symbolizes that you can't move forward as just offering trading because look what happened. I mean, the business of trading, now it costs you nothing to place a trade, nothing. So you have to have a different business model. And what we were trying to trace in this story is how these discount brokers were really challenging the Wall Street establishment when they first got started in the 70s and 80s, and then, really ascended by offering access to trading for more people. Now what's happened is you either have to be a bank yourself as a brokerage, you can't just be a brokerage, or you have to get sold to a bank, apparently.
So I want to ask you, Joel, because this really is the latest in a series of stories that I feel like a very intense time in this. How do you sort of get your arms around this from an editor's perspective?
I just think of it, we talk about it a lot here and in other meetings about the strategy angle to it, and like this is just the textbook kind of version of that, right? Yeah. And I still think the Schwab side of the story is interesting, because it's like we know the consolidation has been something that's going to happen, right? But like, who does it? Like where do the partnerships kind of start to fall in line? And then, of course, the other thing in all of this is the other big kind of wallpaper topic is like, look, these are still in review, right? Like M&A being a thing that is going to maybe start to get some pushback on, and we see it in big tech. We've heard rumors of it in the index space in terms of acquisitions there. So I think there's still a lot that remains to be determined, but, for all intents and purposes, it looks like these things would probably travel through, so.
Yeah, definitely. And you have one other piece that kind of fits together with Morgan Stanley and E-Trade is they both have these, business to business stock kind of trading platforms. So those kind of fit in as well.
Does the consumer win in this?
I guess depends on the type of consumer. From Morgan Stanley's perspective, I think that they want to get in the door of some of those younger customers, more used to trading online, maybe lower asset base right now. And then as they get a little bit older, get a little bit more money in their bank account, more comfortable with trading, et cetera, maybe get a mortgage, for example, and grow up in that way financially, then they want to offer them the more traditional Morgan Stanley type of products.
So, and I think that in a strategic kind of move, I think one of the things that they're trying to be almost like proactively defensive about is how do you fend off the things like Betterment, all right, and all the robo stuff, and we know that Vanguard's going to make a bigger play into robo. And for somebody like Morgan Stanley, like you can kind of emulate that through this acquisition of just like, we're going to have a pretty mobile-centric person that then we can, grow that clientele into being kind of a primary consumer.
And Morgan Stanley has a massive infrastructure and a huge amount of cash to deploy.
Do you need any help? Right? Yeah. Because we're right here for you. Right. So I think there's something going on to that thing.
And I guess from the Wall Street perspective, too, it kind of symbolizes how banks have in many ways moved away from the riskier, sexier kind of divisions and are relying more on like the little guy and retail.
Just basic stuff.
Yeah, the basics. Like
look at Goldman Sachs.
Marcus.
With Marcus and their credit card. I mean, it is sort of amazing to think about, that the war back in the day between Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs was like investment banking fees and IPOs. They still do that, but
we'll take the pennies now.
Yeah, exactly.
Lots of them.
All right. Great stuff. It's a good story that's in the upcoming edition of Bloomberg Business Week. Very much on the news. Annie Massa, investing reporter for Bloomberg, alongside Joel Weber, the editor of Bloomberg Business Week.
All right. Now, for those of you listening in New York, D.C., and San Francisco, also watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week, we're going to continue. If you're listening on Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, Bay State Business, that is coming up next. Now, here on Business Week, coming up next, we're going to take a look at the day's economic news. PMI certainly freaking out investors and pushing certainly yields lower, continuing to move them lower, and also putting pressure on the equity trade. But that wasn't the case for Deere.
No, it was not. And Brooke Sutherland is going to be along. She's going to bring us up to date on what happened at Deere and why they may be a little bit different in a market, as you say, that's been pretty skittish. Later on, also, we're going to catch up with the CEO of Golden Seed. We're talking about the weed business again this week. There's a lot to talk about.
I know, too, in 1 week. And then we're also going to talk about investing in yachts. We have some ideas.
Little yachty.
Little yachty.
Not actually little yachty, but, yachts.
All right, this is Bloomberg.
That saying, success.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Tomorrow, The sports world celebrates the lives of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna with a memorial at Staples Center in Los Angeles.
It was my dream to be a Los Angeles Laker.
Buckle up for Kobe Bryant. The Lakers repeat back-to-back titles.
Wherever you are tomorrow morning, you can listen live to Kobe's celebration of life on TuneIn. Beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. Search Celebrating the Life of Kobe Bryant to honor the basketball legend and his family.
What can I say? Mamba out.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations, podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading on a Friday. Yes, a holiday-shortened week, but it is going to be a down week, a down Friday as well, with the S&P slumping 38 points right now, down 1.1%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 242 points, lower by 0.8%. And NASDAQ lower now by 182 points. That is a drop of 1.9%. Stocks are sinking. Gold is surging. Treasury yields tumbling as investors take a defensive stance amid renewed concern about the economic impact of the coronavirus as it spreads outside of China. Julia Coronado is president and founder of Macro Policy Perspectives.
I don't think that we know the extent to which it is not contained. The virus is not contained. It's spread to Korea. It's definitely causing damage in Japan. So we don't yet know when it's going to stabilize.
The yield on the 30-year, 1.91%. 10-year yield, 1.46%. Gold rallying 1.5%, up 24.50 the ounce at $16.44. West Texas Intermediate crude oil down 0.8%, 53.44 a barrel. Chevron's future growth prospects may be dimming after the oil explorer pumped more crude than it discovered or bought last year, eroding its portfolio of untapped fields. After earnings, Deere shares, they are moving higher, up by 7.7% right now. The machinery giant delivered an unexpected increase in earnings and maintained its annual outlook as early signs of stabilization in the U.S. farm sector offset a slowdown in construction. Again, Deere up by 7.7%. Landry's subsidiary Golden Nugget has offered $50 million for the bankrupt Palm Steakhouse chain in the latest bid by the dining and entertainment giant to snap up distressed restaurants. Again, recapping, stocks lower across the board. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ close to the worst level of the day, with the S&P down 38, down 1.1%. NASDAQ down 184, down 1.9%. And the Dow Jones Industrial Average at 28,965, down 0.9%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, it's time now for some Business Week economics. We got the Friday team in here with us. Alex Harris, bond reporter for Bloomberg. Woohoo! Yelena Shalecheva, senior U.S. economist for Bloomberg Economics. Woohoo! All right, there